A very good morning. I would request everybody who's outside to please join us in. We are about to start in a minute. Everybody who's outside to please join us in. We are about to start in a minute. May I request the DA team to please coordinate everybody who's outside to please join us in. We'll start in a minute. I would request everyone to be seated, please. Thank you so much for the cooperation. A very good morning to one and all present here. I, on behalf of Development Alternatives Group, welcome you all to Saar Sangam, which is the last leg of TARAgram Yatra 2022. The theme for this year's Yatra is co-creating green and inclusive economy, true to which in the last 2 days, about 40 Yatris representing government machinery, development practitioners, and impact enthusiasts have immersed themselves on the field to learn of various innovative models that speak for in the space of climate resilience, resource efficiency, and inclusive entrepreneurship in Bundelkhand, Agra, and Mirzapur, respectively. We thank everybody who has decided upon taking this journey with us. And we look forward to culminating your learnings and drawing a discourse with all of you throughout the discussion spread over the first half today. Before we take this any further, I would request to join us on stage our very own chairman, Dr. Ashok Khosla, Development Alternatives Group. Can we have a round of applause, please? May I also please request our chief guest for the day. This is a person who has devoted more than 25 years of his life to promoting inclusive and sustainable development, a published author of work in health economics, a US aid policy champion, and a nominee of the UNDP Ambassadors Award. Can we please have Mr. Shampi Shah? We welcome you, sir. To kickstart the event today, I would now request Mr. Shashant Patra, CEO, Development Alternatives Group, to please share a few words. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Saundarya. Warm welcome to everyone here for Saar Sangam, which is the last leg of our TARAgram Yatra. The TARAgram Yatra, as you would know, began in 2010. This is the 10th edition. Unfortunately, due to the onslaught of the COVID virus, we missed out on 3 editions in the last couple of years. Uh, I will not take much time to tell you about the Yatra or why we hold it, but would just like to, at the very beginning, dwell upon what we feel is the very important role it plays in building a bridge or many bridges between practice and policy, with conversations taking place both ways. There has been, we've seen, particularly in the last decade, the tendency driven by the belief that large amounts of data collected in remote means can be put together, processed, turned into information, and become the basis of decision-making at the very highest levels, nationally and perhaps even globally, which is something development alternatives believes needs to be questioned. Because often, when we deal with data and information in that manner, there are insights that get missed out. And it is therefore that development alternatives has made a commitment to make sure that we gather insights, we listen to the voices of people who in large numbers, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, are the ones who are driving change of the kind that we want to see. People who have a crucially important role to play in terms of achieving the kind of social, environmental, and economic impact that we hope to see, hopefully within now just the next 7 years or so. And that's the basis for the TARAgram Yatra. We do not rely on development alternatives alone or our partners. One feature of the Yatra is that we extend the invitation to become a Yatri to everyone. It's open. And as many of our Yatris, the people who did the journeys to Mirzapur, Bundelkhand, and Agra, would have seen that there's a mix of practitioners, people who've been in civil society organizations, to academics, to technocrats, professionals, a few people from the business world. And we really believe that these people coming together using lenses of a different kind can throw up perspectives that are absolutely vital if we are to fulfill our goals of sustainable development. And on that note, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you, and in particular, welcome Mr. Sharp. Thank you so much. We know you've squeezed, this occasion into your busy schedule. Welcome our esteemed guests. We will later in the day have Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, Dr. Suman Sahai, Dr. Vibha Gupta, Stuart Worsley, and Navneet Samayar joining us as panelists to listen to what insights have been generated by the Yatra and to share your views on that. Thank you all for being with us today. And of course, I'd like to welcome Dr. Khosla, who many of us have had the pleasure of working with for almost 40 years. Thank you, Ashok, for being with us today. And last, but certainly not the least, and most importantly, welcome all the Yatris. Thank you for, again, taking time out, being out there in the field over the last 3 days and making the Yatra what it has become today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your words, sir. Now that we have gathered here to culminate the learnings of the past 2 days, it only makes sense to revisit the immersion that has taken place. Our team has put together a very quick video on that. Can we have that up on the screen, please? The theme there was climate change resilience and building sustainable communities with focus on information and knowledge. As a part of the Yatra, we had also organized a meeting of the District Entrepreneurship Coalition. countries witnessed various local innovative models towards entrepreneurship as well as climate. The second location for the Yatra was Mirzapur, wherein the models, both entrepreneur as well as systemic prototypes, were showcased to support scaling entrepreneurship-led job creation. The third and the final location of the Yatra was Agra, wherein the theme of circular plastic economy was taken up. Tara in the last year had signed an MOU with Agra Nagar Nigam to improve plastic waste management in the city. This was with support from the global non-profit Alliance to End Plastic Waste. The Yatra took a cue from it. We are thankful to all our donors who have supported us for this TARAgram Yatra 2022. Now, while talking about TARAgram Yatra, what has made this year's journey special is the fact that it aligns with EA's 40th year anniversary. These are 40 years of continued efforts and commitment towards linking policy with practice, towards empowering communities, and more so towards ensuring that there is something for everybody. Let's hear it from the mouth of the person who started it all. I would like to request Dr. Ashok Khosla to please spare a few words on the occasion.
It's working?
Yeah, it's working.
That's right.
Wait a second.
Thank you. This is fine. Yolanda. Yeah. Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, Shambi, my good friends, Dr. Ashok Ghosh, Dr. Vibha Gupta, and all of you distinguished colleagues who have taken part in the Yatra, and I would like to welcome you all to a journey that is midway. 40 years is like a kind of a midlife celebration, and that's what is happening this year. 40 years ago, Development Alternatives was started in 1982 with a very generous grant from the UN, which I've always wanted to appreciate, have an occasion. And now that Shambi is here, I can say that we were very privileged to be awarded basically the first project grant by UNEP to an NGO to start an initiative which represented an original, a pioneering effort to bring sustainable development issues directly into the lives of real people. 1982 to 2022 is a long time. I've been there all that time, and so have several of my colleagues, including Pat and Zenith and a number of others. Over the last 35 to 40 years, we've worked together to build an organization that could make a difference. And now, what was the difference we wanted to make when we started? We wanted to basically bring into the lives of people good, innovative technologies that would be not only good for their lives and livelihoods, but also in harmony with nature and natural resources. We wanted to set up a system that could innovate these technologies and then get them into the market on a large scale. And in 1982, we set up what was probably the first, what is now called social enterprise. Its job was to do the things that NGOs do, that governments are supposed to do, that are in public interest, with very deeply thought through social objectives. But to do it in a manner that would be replicable and scalable in the manner that businesses manage to scale up things. So combining the social and the business, we set up this social enterprise whose job was to bring into the lives of people really advanced thinking and technologies and ways of living and ways of working that would be good for them. So some of the first things we did, some of the very first things we did, yeah, thanks, was to analyze who were the most vulnerable, who were the people needing help the most from modern science, from modern technology, from modern business methods. And of course, it was pretty obvious. Very quickly, we learned that the women in villages had some of the deepest and most gravest needs. These needs included cooking and lighting and work and a variety of other things in which various kinds of implements would be very important. And the very first things we did were things like creating advanced cook stoves, chulas, to help them in managing not only their cooking, but their time, and to make them more efficient, and their health by making them less polluting. So basically, starting with chulas, we got into a variety of other kinds of technologies that I'll tell you about in a minute, all of which were designed really to bring a completely new way of living and working in villages, remote communities, in homes where people didn't have a chance to have these comforts. So in the beginning, we set up a mechanism for innovation. Innovation that was funded very generously by foundations overseas, by bilateral organizations and multilateral organizations, including, of course, UNEP, and with the help of the Swiss government and the British government and the Canadian government and foundations like MacArthur, Ford, Rockefeller, we were able to develop a whole range of technologies for such things as shelter, new construction materials, for recycling, various things like paper, for designing new ways of improving the productivity of people like weavers. We, in fact, managed over the first 4 or 5 years to develop a whole range of weaving technologies called Tara looms and all the ancillaries, which were remarkable in improving the lives and the wages and the earnings of weavers. The journey so far, which you cannot possibly read, because even I can't read it from here, over these 40 years is described by a great deal of innovation, and you'll see some pictures of those things. And one of the first things we were able to do was develop a whole series of technologies for construction. And this became our headquarters, the first headquarters that DA had, which was built around 1990. And it was made basically almost entirely out of mud, compressed earth. It had no cement in it, no steel, no wood, no bricks. And basically, it was an emblem of the kind of technologies that we basically were looking at. Natural, low impact, local materials, capable of being made by local skills with local initiative. And this was our headquarters for a good 17 years before we outgrew it. We had too many people, couldn't fit in there, and we had to exchange it for a more modern one, which I will show you in a few minutes. These were made, this building was made to show that even an urban office building could be made with these, but the intention basically was that this would be a rural housing technology. And these are the machines that went with it. The Balram mud block press was the machine that actually made the blocks with which that building I showed you were made. But we also did a lot of work on water testing, water purification, water distribution, water management, with all kinds of new ways of doing recycling, including making recycled handmade paper, which was commercially very attractive. And we were actually the pioneers who started the whole business of fly ash from a horrible waste material from thermal power stations into building materials. Today, there are tens of thousands of fly ash manufacturing units, commercial, but they all basically drew on the innovations of DA, which were then essentially scaled up by competition, by partners as well as competitors all over the country. We did a lot of work on developing various kinds of agriculture, particularly agroforestry of various types. We've basically been working with setting up enterprises of various types, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and a variety of innovations that were truly remarkable, including a literacy program with which we could teach a woman, totally illiterate woman, how to read, write, and do simple arithmetic within 56 days at a very low cost. And this program called Tara Akshar became really quite extraordinary, was supported a great deal by foundations, and we managed to teach almost 250,000 women how to read, write, and do arithmetic over a period of about 5-6 years. We also set up a community radio station in Bundelkhand, which proved to be extremely successful in developing the local consciousness about issues relating to how to improve their lives. The way we do our technology work is essentially to develop it, innovate it, then we incubate it, we actually operate it and try to show that it's commercially viable, and then we license it to other people who then make full use of it. Our work includes, as you've just seen over the last 3 or 4 days in your yatra, work on the ground, work with real people, working with all the way from literacy with technologies to jobs and enterprises, all the way basically to policy. Our work on policy advocacy is extremely successful because we have a great deal of understanding from the ground, what people need and what are the realities. And so essentially that makes it possible for us to provide governments and corporations with policy advice that actually does have an impact. Today we live and work in a new building. This is our new headquarters made out of the same materials that I described before, except it has much more fly ash in it. And it's a remarkable building, just 4 or 5 kilometers south of here. And it's a building that demonstrates that you can be in ultra-modern built environments with all the comforts of a good office building, but with very little impact on Mother Earth. It has extremely low energy consumption because it doesn't really need much air conditioning or heating. It doesn't use much material. Its use of virgin materials is about 70%, 65% less than a normal conventional building like the one we are sitting in at the moment. So I show you all these because our work has been very innovative. We've developed a new cement, the first new cement in about 200 years. In fact, the 5th cement in history, which is about 40% less energy consuming and 40% less carbon emitting than conventional Portland cement. And it's extremely good performance. So we are now providing the know-how to big cement companies so that they can stop emitting so much carbon dioxide and have a much less impact on the climate. We, at the moment, are focusing more and more on enterprises. Our job is to create jobs, livelihoods, through creating local enterprises. It used to be called informal sector, or it used to be called micro enterprises, but basically these are enterprises that create large numbers of jobs, use local materials, and satisfy the local markets. And these basically have been extremely successful. We have a very large program. Part of it is funded by the Ministry of MSME, micro and small and medium enterprises. Part of it is funded by its own operations because most of it's commercially viable. And these enterprises all over the country in almost 20 of the states of India are actually providing local people with extraordinary opportunities for improving their incomes. So our job essentially will continue to be to make an impact on the ground, learn from that impact, get information and ideas from local people, and then translate them into nationwide impact initiatives. So we would like you very much to enjoy the programs of today, which are really a wrap-up of the Yatra, which you've just, most of you have just been on. And this Yatra is an annual event which we basically would like to bring a very much larger group of scientists and policymakers and academics and NGOs to see how participative development, development in which people participate in their own future and make decisions about what they aspire to do in a manner that is also fed with good scientific understanding. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words, sir. Dr. Khosla, we may not voice it out very often, but thanks to you and to the entire senior leadership for creating an enabling environment for young adults like me for making mistakes, learning from those, and approaching alternative perspectives to development. Thank you so much, sir. We have here with us the United Nations Resident Coordinator in India, Mr. Shah. So may I trouble you to share a few words with the Yatris and others who have joined us here today in Saar Sangam. A round of applause for Mr. Shah, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khosla, or Ashok, if I may. Mr. Patara, as well, and all of you, dear colleagues here this morning for this important conversation. Let me say on behalf of the United Nations system here in India, Namaste. Mujhe TARAgram Yatra mein akar bahut khushi hui. And it's maybe a little bit cheating to be joining the Yatra just at the very tail end. So I don't actually deserve credit as a Yatri as the rest of you. But I do have to say that I've developed in my year here now in India a special appreciation for the concept and the phrase Yatra. And I think it's really something special that India brings to the global discourse and global culture. I'd like to thank Development Alternatives, of course, for not just for the invitation to be here today, but for having started this incredible journey 40 years ago. It's hard to imagine such an amazing, long-standing partnership. 40 years. I mean, Ashok, you must have been 3 or 4 years old when you started Development Alternatives. So very happy that we were able to be there in the very beginning, from the ground up, and we've seen such an incredible record of accomplishment over these 40 years, and such a breadth as well of the different sectors and ways that you've engaged with communities and helping to really to create this concept of social enterprises from the beginning, and bringing the power of business to social priorities. I understand that this is the culmination of a number of activities, of visits to really impressive action on the ground, plastic segregation, recycling sites in Agra, micro entrepreneurs in Mirzapur, communities on the front lines of fighting climate change, responding to climate change in Bundelkhand and others. So let me just again appreciate the investment of all of you coming together. It's a whole of society response very much that we need. Today's the theme, the topic, generally speaking, of resilience and green development is truly, in the words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, I mean, this is the question of our time, and this cuts to the very heart of really everything that we are trying to do in the United Nations, both globally and, of course, here our partnership in India. Sustainability is the word, and we know that the world at the moment is in a very unsustainable position. We're facing multiple overlapping, the new term is polycrisis, trying still to emerge from a global pandemic, and then facing the impact of the war in Ukraine and this devastating effect on the prices of energy and supplies and food and fuel, hydrocarbons, carbohydrates, price rises everywhere we look, and especially impacting developing countries and poor communities within countries. All of this, of course, comes in the backdrop of the greatest existential threat of all that we can't for a moment lose sight of, and that is the triple planetary crisis, the loss of biodiversity, pollution crisis, and of course, climate change. COP27 has just concluded in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I'm sure you've been following it very closely. Many of us have, despite very significant disagreements and despite an inability to come to even tighter mitigation commitments, generally speaking, across the board, though we are very happy to have achieved a breakthrough in terms of recognizing for the first time through the COP process, a global agreement on a loss and damages fund. And this is something that especially the Global South, G77, the developing world has been pushing for since 1992. So actually, development alternatives was already, a decade in the fight. But this is a truly important accomplishment, and I think we still have to we have to fill that fund with resources. We have to determine who will be able to access that fund and ensure that those resources are put to good use. But that's a really, really important breakthrough from this COP27, and something that India has been very much at the forefront in terms of the geopolitical negotiations to bring that to bear. Now, colleagues, of course, the bad news is that if you want to look at the warmest years on record, however far you want to go back, you just have to look at the most immediate years, and this is something really frightening. And the curve continues to increase geometrically. So the hottest 7 years essentially have been the last 7. The hottest 20 essentially the last 20. So this is clearly an unsustainable path, and we've seen devastating impacts, of course, across the world, but here in India, also particularly vulnerable to heat waves, to floods, to inclement weather as well. So the evidence is clear that business as usual takes all of us to the end of the edge of the cliff. Growth in industry based on polluting fossil fuels simply cannot continue. And yet, at the same time, we have to meet people's right to development. And I think that, we all have in our hearts the interests of our future generations, of our youth, and the future that they are looking at right now is not the one that they deserve. So the good news, though, is that there's a lot to be optimistic about. And in my view, India has a lot to do with that. With 1/6 of humanity, with one of the fastest, perhaps the fastest growing large economy, with so many dynamic entrepreneurs and businesses and social enterprises. And we've heard a lot of examples here today, especially world-beating, cutting-edge businesses in the areas of innovation, of technology, of renewable energy, electric mobility, clean energy, and climate-friendly technologies. There is so much coming out of India now that gives us hope for the future. And of course, India is also home to the world's largest youth generation. So many young minds, an incredible demographic dividend that if those jobs can be provided, as Ashok was mentioned, for the young people entering the job markets, India is at the early stages of a demographic dividend that very few countries have experienced over the coming few decades. Also, many of the solutions to respond effectively to the triple planetary crisis are already within our reach, and it requires a whole of society approach, again, so well embodied by the Yatra. And I've had the opportunity in my short time here in India so far to see firsthand many examples of this, traveling around the country. It's been so inspiring, from the first fully solar-powered village in Modera to the eco-feminist village of Piplantri in Rajsamand, Rajasthan, joining the world's largest beach cleanup in Varsava Beach in Mumbai, engaging with the Kudumbashree in Kerala, and working with the salt workers, the women in Kutch in Gujarat, and helping to working with them to transition to becoming solar engineers. All of these, so many incredible examples. And I do want to say that there is one really important thread cutting across, and that's something also that Ashok mentioned. It's the power of women's engagement, of gender equality, of women's empowerment, that India, any country, India is no exception, will simply not achieve its potential without fully bringing in women into the full spectrum of decision-making in business, in politics, in households, in the community. Now, India is, of course, also taking advantage increasingly of the opportunity to leapfrog. So the development phase now coming at a point where India is industrializing in a way that's very different and much more environmentally sustainable in many respects than countries that have come before, and increasingly a front runner in terms of a low carbon development path. The scale of investment in India, as I've already mentioned, in renewables, for example, the potential of renewables, is simply staggering. An increase in the investment in solar capacities of something like 50-fold in just the last 10 years, and this is increasing. The International Energy Agency concludes, according on the basis of its assessments, that India's advantages in solar makes it one of the cheapest places in the world to generate solar power. And the life cycle costs for renewables in India are already far below that of polluting coal. So we have to work together to make this transition happen as quickly as possible. And again, India's businesses are really on the forefront at all levels. The major global world-leading industries, the medium, small, and micro enterprises also. But if you look at the cumulative investment plans for India's private sector in terms of green energy for the coming years, already we see something like $200 billion aligned for this purpose. And we need to ensure, as we've already heard today, we need to ensure that the entire value chain of the Indian business world is brought into this process, that the vast majority of India's businesses, which are micro, small, and medium enterprises, are brought into that revolution. A couple other points I think that are so important in terms of India's role and leadership in the world. One is adaptation. India has been the leading voice in terms of recognizing that it's no longer about what will happen to us. It's about what's happening to us right here and now. And again, the impact being so much greater on developing countries and poorer communities, and showing that the investment in adaptation is critically important and yields a very, very high return, something like $4 on $1 of investment in adaptation. But adaptation requires policies and regulations and stimulation of that investment. And I think that also India, for example, we were talking about Yatra, or we talk about Jan Andolan. India's Prime Minister has recently launched the Lifestyles for Environment initiative. And in fact, I was very honored to be together with the UN Secretary General and the Prime Minister in Kevadia and Gujarat to help launch that. And this is about understanding the importance of harnessing the power that each of us have as individuals, as consumers. So, of course, governments and large businesses are sort of, the biggest players in a sense in terms of making the changes we needed. But each one of us actually individually has the greatest power of all, the power of one. Something like 2/3 of greenhouse gases are emitted from household consumption. So we can make incredibly important changes, both in terms of adapting our behaviors towards responsible consumption and driving those market signals that force companies to change their practices as well. So I think, and then finally, climate justice. And this links very much with adaptation, recognizing that we cannot we cannot lose focus on the importance of mitigation. We cannot stop this momentum of increasing our commitments as a global society, as countries, to reducing our emissions, because at the end of the day, then that takes all of us to a place of no future or a terrible future. But at the same time, we have to have honest conversations about how do we get there, about the remaining carbon allocations and credits that do exist. Who has been responsible for the current situation that we're in? Who has benefited historically from developing in an unsustainable way? And this is also, I think, something that's been a breakthrough in the COP27. Even though they're very difficult conversations and they're unhappy conversations, we're now having a much more truthful and honest conversation, as we've seen high-income developing countries who have very regrettably suddenly faced unexpected challenges in terms of how to heat their homes in the cold winter. Well, the developing world and with the leading voice of India is sort of saying, welcome to our world. Welcome to the reality that our communities face. We're still working on energy security. We're still working on many of these basic aspects. And we therefore cannot also for a moment let go of our community's right to develop. So it requires a partnership between the high-income countries and middle and lower-income countries, and an honest partnership of solidarity in which high-income countries put forth the resources that they have pledged and up their ambition in terms of making that possible. And the Loss and Damages Fund is an important way to help do that. So I think let me conclude by again just saying that it's a great honor and pleasure for the UN system to be here in India, to be working with important partners like Development Alternatives and all of you in the room. It's an incredibly exciting time, especially to be here in India, because as this world, as we seek to navigate so many uncharted waters, we are comforted to know that a country such as India is increasingly taking leadership in the global stage, in the multilateral space. For example, the presidency of the G20 just kicking off now in a matter of days will be very, very important. It overlaps, India's G20 presidency overlaps with a very important number of milestone events on the global stage. The Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda reaches its midterm. So we will be, as a global community, taking stock of where we are and where we need to go at precisely the time that India's G20 presidency will be seeking to put the Sustainable Development Goals and sustainable development at the heart of the G20 discussion as well. So let me conclude on that note of optimism, informed optimism. And again, thank you so much for the last 40 years and for the next 40 years, and really say that we're so pleased to be a partner with all of you in this journey. Bahut dhanyavad.
Mr. Shah, thank you so much, sir. We are grateful to you for joining us here today despite your busy schedule. May I now request Mr. Patara to provide a small token of regards to Dr. Khosla and to Mr. Shah. Just a small token of regards, sir. Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you so much. I would now request Dr. Khosla and Mr. Shah to join us in the front and enjoy the discussion, sir. We'll jump right into the leg wherein we'll discuss the lessons from the Yatra. Thank you so much for sparing your time and your words for the gathering here today. Yes.
And sorry, just one more word. I do apologize. I will need to be running off here very shortly. But on a very relevant note, which is Minister Yadav has agreed to come speak to our UN country team to share his impressions, his thoughts of COP27, and to discuss again how to, in the context of that, how to bring new and innovative approaches to our partnership, the United Nations system, and India in the wake of COP27. So precisely these issues we will be discussing. So please, apologies that I can't stay for the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For sharing the lessons with us, may I request on stage the Yatri from Agra, Miss Mona Lisa from Mithika Waste Management, sorry. Please join us on the stage, ma'am. From Mirzapur, we have Miss Ratna from Center for India Bamboo Resource and Technology. Miss Ratna from Center for India Bamboo Resource and Technology. And Mr. Chandra Bhushan, Program Manager for Medha. From Bundelkhand, can we have on the stage Ms. Jean McLean, the Director Engagement and Communication of Green Economy Coalition? And can we also please have Ms. Shruti Agarwal from MNIT? To moderate the discussion, I would invite Ms. Zeenat, Senior Vice President, Development Alternatives Group, on the stage. Over to you, ma'am.
Cheers for everybody. Thank you, Soundarya. No, I don't have a presentation. Can I put it down? Yeah. Well, a very good morning to everybody again. And it's great to be back from a very grueling 2 days on the field. So, and nice to see people fresh despite that tough journey on the road. We just heard Mr. Sharp speak about the fact that India is at the forefront, or rather will be the crucible of solutions as we go forward in this, and provide the lessons for the low carbon pathways, as he called them. And I think along with the Yatris and along with development alternatives, I'm quite sure when our grandchildren will ask us many, many years later, what were you doing? And we will be very proud to say we were building that path. And so with that, the Yatris who traveled on that path to build it, we traveled together. We saw, we listened, we shared, we questioned, we provided some suggestions, I hope, for new practices. We built new perspectives. I'm sure we also generated ideas for policy recommendations for local governments, for state governments, and for the national government on how we can address these, what Mr. Sharp called polycrisis, which development alternatives calls the three fundamental crises today facing us in India and, of course, globally. The crisis of resources, the fact that we are growing. We are just a few days back crossed the 8 billion mark globally, and we are about 1.43 or 44 billion in India. We have the crisis of livelihoods, not just of jobs, but fundamental resources and fundamental systems to enable sustainable livelihoods. We are also on, compounding all of this in the midst of the climate crisis and the crisis of biodiversity loss. And the three yatras looked at these from their own perspectives. We have tired but excited yatris with us here. Each yatra looked at a separate theme, but integrated and acknowledged the interconnections of the other themes. And so, was looking at the fact that you're addressing climate vulnerabilities, but in the context of the need to have secure livelihoods. You're also addressing urbanization and the crisis of plastics pollution, but from a resource scarcity and a livelihood potential perspective, and a climate sort of question mark. Similarly, in the space of livelihoods, where are the opportunities in this new changing space? So I'm going to call one by one, and I'm not going to take much time anymore. And so we'll hear straight from the yatris. We'll begin with Agra first. Where is my co-moderator? We will begin with Agra first. So I believe Mona Lisa you will be joining us, addressing, we went to Agra, looked at a very fast growing and aspiring city of approximately 44 lakhs. Knowing fully well that, in very short time, we are going to be 50% urban and 50% rural. So we need to look at both solutions, and urban areas where a lot of consumption happens is also the spaces where a lot of pollution and a lot of problems are coming in, and the city is recognizing that. So we learned from the city to say how, the city is handling it. You have a presentation? Yeah, go ahead. Do we have it here? Okay. I'm going to sit down. Mona, you want to come here? You can go wherever.
Hello, my name is Mona and we were Agra Yatris on this journey.
First of all, thanks to the opportunity, alternatives, sorry. It is because you are getting opportunities and opportunities with some opportunities. And the thanks to the alternatives. It's a very big opportunity. Because this is given an awesome for us. I have no words to say. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for the. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for being here and standing in front of you. We will explain you the what are our experiences.
And congratulations, Development Alternatives, on your 40 years of journey. Thank you, Ashok sir, both the Ashok sirs, for inspiring us in the youth of the country to work beyond our capacity, our personal goals for the environment and the society. Thank you, sir. Yes, this is one of our group photos in front of Taj Mahal, and we worked on enabling circular economy for plastic waste solutions in India. We see that when we talk about waste management, it is multidimensional, and there are so many stakeholders involved in this waste management work. So we have tried to enlist the challenges from each stakeholder's point of view, the major stakeholder being the local municipal body. And one of the major challenges was that people don't take ownership of their own waste, due to which asking them to segregate their waste or be responsible about it became a very difficult challenge for the local body. Infrastructure, we lack at many places on infrastructural developments. Localized, cost-effective and innovative solution. See, every city or town has its own challenges. So the solution has to be developed, localized, whether in the system or in the part of machineries. Data are either not available or are not correct, due to which planning becomes difficult part. Again, as I said, that every city has its own challenges. Agra had 3.5 crores recorded tourist inflow every year. Now, this put extra pressure on the local body and on the waste management system.
Suppose we are imposing everything law, we are making it very, we are making a very to stop this part. What are the alternatives? Are there ample amount of harassment level or any measures which we are taking? So we have to give them the alternatives. Then unilateral communication. I was very much serious about it. And so I have put it in a point also. The every communication was unidirectional. If there could be, if there are technology, we can go and talk Paita also. So that would be a helpful to us. Whether or not lack of system of irrigation is so. It is one this descriptive type. And whatever exactly you say, the first of all, the most important thing is what is the match. And every day in the team uses the match. You stop going to watch the match in real, and you will not watch it. So then the people have not the confidence in the waste they are giving, going to be segregated when they are giving, having any result or not. They have lost the confidence, they have less confidence in it.
They see that it is mixed after a point of time. So what is the point of segregation? So we have to showcase them that if you segregate, this is the impact and this is how we are processing. The knowledge has to be transferred to citizen as well. Again, there are major partners working on ground, NGOs and waste management organization. We have, yes, a scarcity of funds. Now, we need a lot of support from the municipality since it is the governing bodies and more of such support are required. There are a lack of interdepartmental synergies and waste management. Further, I'll move to, yes, waste management business.
We didn't see this as a business, as a former or planned business, but it's a really great business. There are very great aspects of that. So we need to show the people on it. EPR fund, canalization, and PIPO. So far, knowing is very well. The EPR combines has not the companies of the lesser and they should be made to not just take this stuff only compliances. They should take this thing seriously. All the ideas to take this thing seriously and create a business law on that. Informality of the sector means or the reputable segment is very much neglected. We need to find out of even in Agra, we need to find a single one. And who are the by law this managers of the society.
Entrepreneur model has to be developed for them.
Big contractors, big road builders, big constructors. So we can call the waste management experts to who these all are. So the startup has got a barrier there. We need to clear that barrier.
Our learning was better understanding of a waste value chain from NGOs working on ground who was working on IC and source segregation, then how municipality was taking these segregated waste to their landfilling station, processing them using the Tromble machine, and different kinds of waste was processed differently. Like cow dung, they were manufacturing manure out of it. Food waste were composted as city compost. Plastic were segregated through Trombles. And CND waste was again made into bricks. Yes. So that was a great learning experience, seeing all these technology working together in a synergy and producing result out of it. Yes, in Smart City Office, we saw the integrated ICT based system for data recording and monitoring, which also helped police and other government departments in channelizing the city in a very correct way, and the waste management system as well.
And this is not an easy IT parks, IT zones, why not waste zones? So that the people who, it is a business of secondary type or tertiary type, people don't want to explain it, but it's a very basic business. It's having a very, very, why don't we take a waste zone? Like IT zone is there, every hub is there, so why not a zone to be created so that waste business further will come and they also be proud to say, yeah, we have a office there, we are working on it.
Glamorization of waste business, I would say, yeah.
Empowering informal workers to entrepreneurs. That is from waste pickers to entrepreneurs. We need to channelize them from waste pickers to entrepreneurs. And now the ground market, everybody knows that there is a big, very, very big market here. So we can explore that market.
Way forward, we put a small opinions on way forward. We have to shift focus on waste collection to recovery from waste, material recoveries from waste. हम ऐसा सोचते हैं कि okay, we have to collect and waste and keep the city clean. No, it is a business, it is a raw material, and we have to work on material efficiency.
Waste collection. If you see the ULPs and everyone, what priority is waste collection? The city is not clean. So we are carrying it down from one place to separate to other. So proper waste management, we should focus the right point from that. We need to be segregation to the end-to-end solution.
Awareness impact should be quantified. What is their value or recycling capacity out of IC activities we are getting? Reforms in the municipal cadre for effective implementation of SWM in every city and town in the villages of our country.
professional training of that, what is the waste management,
Yes,
and how to govern on that?
Digital solution, more digital solutions should be enrolled in the waste management business. We need more data. Either data is not available, so data inventorization we have to work on, and transparency. We see many data are manipulated, which hampers the policy making and strategy formulation.
Collaboration and partnership. Every pillar of the society, the NGOs, the PSOs, the work, the people,
And the waste innovators.
general people, everybody have an important role in policy forming with the European government activity. Then only a proper output will come. Even the elder representative also, the elder representative also, the representative also, the government body also, everybody has to come on a single platform so that the output which comes out should have a strong
Impact.
impact.
We thank you for your kind attention and time, and dear again for this opportunity. Thank you. Sorry if we have taken more than expected time. It was such an overwhelming experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Atulya. Thank you, Mona Lisa. This was a very interesting summarization of our 2 days. I mean, we can see that we are, if Agra is a representative of much of the fast-growing urban towns and cities in this country, then I can say for sure that we are still very nascent in our understanding of secondary resource having a value. We are still looking at it from very much a problem of littering perspective. So while that's of course there, but this is a huge opportunity, something that all of us on the ground realized, and the power that technology has, I think sitting in that smart city office, that the power that AI and technology can have in democratizing it and enabling us as common citizens to work. A point that I think you raised right at the bottom was start from the young. And I think in this day and age where everything is now becoming large, where we want large industry solutions, we've forgotten the fact that the solution begins on the ground by the individual and therefore by the child. And that came back and hit us there very, very much, that the change will come when every one of us knows that it's important that every bit of thing that we use has a value, and the more you mix it, the more you reduce that value. And so segregation, separation, valuing your resources is an education we need to get right from kindergarten. Thank you very much. I'm going to now call upon the next team from Mirzapur to make a presentation. What did we learn about inclusive livelihoods, listening, sharing, and ring? So Ratnaji from Sibat and Chandrabhushanji. I think, yeah, we have it here.
Slide.
Yeah. You can use I should give you this. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Ratna, and then we are into the second group, where that one we went to Mirzapur, one of the amazing towns. That's small still. The district is now emerging with lot of opportunities. Where I just thankful for DA for this opportunity, and Sri Goshi, Sri Koshlaji, and everyone. It is not audible. It's audible, right? Okay. And the thing, actually, we also welcome all the co-authors and then the team which we have just gone into that Mirzapur. And I have just heard about that the plastic waste management team's views. Then the team which we have just gone, and then the idea that we have taken it for the second group is on the inclusive entrepreneurship and scaling up those green enterprises, creating into more green jobs. This is the concept that we have just the team has just worked on. There are two teams that which we taken into opportunities. We went to discuss with the communities. In the orientation itself, that we have set the context on how we are just going to be achieving, or how we are going to be looking into that ground level realities, understanding the challenges and the issues, where one of the biggest kind of the area that we are thinking about, that one creating more green jobs. going and then looking and then discussing with the community and understanding about the challenges and the issues at their own level, and or setting up any of the small or big or it's a medium or in a large scale enterprises. So in the context setting that we have just we have made into groups, and then on Comic Sense and also on the Canvas model that we had gone to the community and understanding their perspectives, and then we are listening to the entrepreneurs. There we have just seen a micro entrepreneur, and then we also went into a medio and also at a meso level and also into a macro level in a large scale enterprises, not at a macro level, it's large enterprises. When we are listening to the entrepreneurs, that we understood about the basic challenges, what are the kind of the mindset that they have just taken these kind of the businesses, and where were the needs, and then why they just thinking about going for this kind of the enterprise mode, and how they are thinking about sustaining it. So one of the challenges that which we have just looking at it that when they started the small enterprise, there are very less or limited or no challenges. When they think about going and then scaling it up, there are the challenges are coming in both on the physical form or in the mindset form or in the financial form or in the legality form, or there are no such policy conducive policy at policy level kind of the things. And second, that the another very important like a challenge that when all the entrepreneurs that whom that we all had met, seeing about this the technical expertise and somebody that who will be coming and then giving them about the know-hows on their business business scaling up or the business that which they are just doing it, and they also like thinking about that one, where is the market, so how they can just go and then access the market. When they are producing it into a large scale, the produce and the materials that how it is needs to be going to the market acceptability. So these kind of the challenges they did not think about that when they start the enterprise. When they are just going and when they are passing into the second or third phase, these challenges are coming and then forcing them. So there is a very clear kind of the plan on doing it with the technical experts on different businesses. They should be just be there. So another point is that when they are going for their business plan approval at the local level or with the government bodies, they are finding it as it is more kind of a like a storytelling to the government bodies or the financiers. Sometimes that they get accepted at the first level, sometimes even after several levels, that one they are not getting their business plans approved. So these kind of the things we have found out that one at the government level, also at the approving sanctioning body, the technical understanding orientation or the different business perspective that needs to be, they should be capacitated with all these kind of the technical know-hows. So I can also go.
Thank you. अभी हमने challenges overview पूरी यात्रा का देखा. अभी जो learning जो हमारी थी पूरी यात्रा में, तो अलग अलग क्योंकि मैं भी एक एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इकोसिस्टम में ही काम करता हूं, तो एक चैलेंज होता है कि हर जो भी रूरल एरिया में काम करता है उसको लगता है कि एक स्टैंडर्ड कोई भी सॉल्यूशन है इसको लेके जाते हैं और फिट कर देते हैं. लेकिन यहाँ पे विजिट के दौरान हमें फील हुआ कि हर एक प्रॉब्लम का एक अपना कस्टमाइज सॉल्यूशन होना चाहिए. वो वहां पे दिखा कि अगर इशू है उस इलाके में, चैलेंज है कि पूरा सोसाइटी पेट्रियार्कल है, उसको चैलेंज करने के लिए हमें एक रोल मॉडल क्रिएट करना होगा. तो वो लर्निंग थी को वहां का सॉल्यूशन था कि अगर एक ई रिक्शा ड्राइवर अगर होते हैं तो वो केवल अर्निंग नहीं जनरेट कर रही हैं, वो इकोसिस्टम को चैलेंज कर रही हैं, वो सोसाइटी को चैलेंज कर रही हैं. ई रिक्शा होने के बाद उसके बाद ई रिक्शा चलाती हैं तो उसका रिपेयर का शॉप भी खुलता है, और वो स्कूल के जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, गर्ल स्टूडेंट्स हैं जो स्कूल जाने में कंफर्टेबल नहीं होती है, उनके लिए भी आसान हो जाता है, पेरेंट्स के लिए भी सिक्योर फीलिंग होती है. तो वो एक चीज की कस्टमाइज सॉल्यूशन होने चाहिए हर प्रॉब्लम का. इसके अलावा कि जो भी एजेंसीज हैं जो इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं ग्राउंड पे जाके, वो क्योंकि हमेशा के लिए वहां नहीं रहने वाली हैं, वहां पे एक इकोसिस्टम क्रिएट करना पड़ेगा और उनका अपना एग्जिट प्लान होना चाहिए कि 4 साल 5 साल 10 साल बाद वो कैसे सेल्फ इवॉल्व हो, पूरा वो इकोसिस्टम सेल्फ इवॉल्व हो. तो उसके लिए क्या होना चाहिए, तो जो कोलिजन का पूरा आइडिया था, मतलब कि गवर्नमेंट बॉडी, लोकल एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, कम्युनिटी एंटरप्रेन्योर्स जो काम कर रहे हैं वो सब मिलके अपने प्रॉब्लम का सॉल्यूशन ढूंढे वहीं पे, और वो ज्यादा सस्टेनेबल है। मतलब कि हम एज एजेंसी कभी भी जाते हैं, हम भी कभी कभी इंटरवीन करते हैं, तो वो सस्टेनेबल नहीं है। वो इकोसिस्टम क्रिएट करना, तो जो डीए ने वहां पे इकोसिस्टम क्रिएट किया वो इंटरेस्टिंग था, वो लर्निंग थी। इसके बाद हाँ, अपॉर्चुनिटीज क्या है, मतलब कि जैसे ही रूरल जो इकोनॉमी है, मतलब कि वर्मी कंपोस्ट के बारे में बात होती है, इसके अलावा टेलरिंग के बात होती है, जो प्रोडक्ट है, रॉ प्रोडक्ट है फ्रूट से उसको पिकल बनाने की बात होती है, तो वो जो पहले बड़े बड़े शहरों में फैक्ट्री में बनती है और वहां जाती हैं, जबकि वो प्रोडक्ट गाँव से निकल के आता है, तो वहां पे अगर क्रिएट करेंगे तो लोगों को वहां रोजगार भी मिलेगा, वहां के लोगों का लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड भी बढ़ रहा होगा और सोसाइटी में भी चेंजेस होंगे, तो वो अपॉर्चुनिटी वहां पे है। और ये इस तरह के जो माइक्रो एंटरप्राइजेस सेटअप हो रहे हैं, इससे वो चेंज हो रहा है, तो ये बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है। नेटवर्किंग कोलिशन के थ्रू जो नेटवर्किंग हो रही है वो उनकी अपस्किलिंग कर रही है, उनको फाइनेंस दे रही है, उनको मेंटोरशिप दे रही है, और एग्रीगेटिंग अलग अलग जो बिजनेस मॉडल्स हैं जैसे कि क्रिएट हो रहे हैं उस इलाके में, तो ये उस इलाके के जो एक तरह से फैब्रिक है, पॉजिटिव सेंस में उसको तोड़ ब्रेक कर रहा है और आगे लेके जा रहा है। नेक्स्ट, हाँ, इसमें जो हमें लगता है कि इसको आगे बढ़ाने का तरीका क्या हो सकता है, और जो चैलेंज फेस हुआ कि अभी एक लेवल पे जैसे कि बिजनेसेस को हमें फेज वाइज डिवाइड करना होगा, कि अगर एक लेवल का सपोर्ट मिल गया और नेक्स्ट लेवल पे पहुंच गया तो उनको अब नेक्स्ट लेवल का सपोर्ट चाहिए, अलग तरह के मेंटोरशिप की जरूरत है, जिसकी मैम ने भी बात भी की थी कि अलग तरह के एक्सपर्टाइज की जरूरत है, तो वो कनेक्ट करना उनसे गवर्नमेंट, खासकर वुमेन और यूथ का, क्योंकि ये जो सेक्शन है पूरा वो अछूता रह जाता है, पूरा का पूरा वुमेन का, उसमें जब वो एंटरप्राइजिंग होती हैं तो उनकी वजह से पूरी फैमिली एंटरप्राइजिंग होती है, ट्रस्ट बढ़ता है, पूरा जो हमारी बोलते हैं कि खासकर नॉर्थ हिंदी बेल्ट में कि वुमेन अर्न नहीं करती हैं, ऐसे काम नहीं करती जिससे कि वो पैसे बना पाए, ऐसे काम तो करती हैं उतना ही, लेकिन वो घर में काम करती उसका कोई मॉनेटरी वैल्यू नहीं होता, जब तक वो मॉनेटरी वैल्यू क्रिएट नहीं कर पाएंगी तो उसका फैमिली का, उस रूरल इकोनॉमी का ग्रोथ नहीं होने वाला है। तो वो एक तरीका है जो अभी हो रहा है, इसको और स्केल करने की जरूरत है, इसको और आगे लेके जाने की जरूरत है। इसके अलावा जो यूथ के साथ कॉलेजेस में, जो इस एरिया में जो कॉलेजेस हैं वहां पे जो यूथ हैं उनको अभी जो मोटिवेशन है वो केवल गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स के लिए होती हैं, तो वहां पे अगर यूथ को एंटरप्राइजिंग माइंडसेट डेवलप किया जाए, अभी न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसीज में कुछ चीजें आई भी हैं कि उनको डेवलप किया जाए, लेकिन वो कॉलेज तक पहुंचने में टाइम लगेगा, लेकिन अभी कोलिशन के थ्रू, एक्सपोजर्स के थ्रू यहाँ पर हम उनको कनेक्ट करें तो ये चीजें दूर हो सकती है, मतलब उनके अंदर एंटरप्राइज डेवलप हो तो वो छोटे छोटे रोजगार क्रिएट कर सकते हैं, एक दो लोगों को रोजगार दे सकते हैं और माइग्रेशन को रोक सकते हैं, जो कि हमारे पार्टनर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो वहाँ पे मिर्जापुर अपने प्रेजेंट किए, उन्होंने बताया कि ये सबसे बड़ा इशू है माइग्रेशन का, और उसके लिए वो काम करना चाहते हैं, यूथ को यहाँ रोकना चाहते हैं और उनको यहीं पे अच्छा इनकम जनरेट करने का मौका देना चाहते हैं। पॉलिसी लेवल पे जो भी कई सारी पॉलिसीज हैं, तो अलग अलग जो डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं गवर्नमेंट की, उनके पास अलग अलग एंटरप्राइज सेटअप के सपोर्ट के लिए पॉलिसीज है, लेकिन सब डुप्लीकेसी कई बार होती है, एक ही एंटरप्रेन्योर कई जगह से पॉलिसीज का फायदा उठाता है और जो और नीडी लोगों उनको फायदा नहीं मिलता है। लेकिन जैसा कि अभी इसका कोलिशन का है कि उसमें सभी पार्टनर्स एक साथ आते हैं, वहां पे सभी का एक जो पॉलिसीज हर डिपार्टमेंट की एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के अराउंड पॉलिसीज है उसको डिस्क्राइब किया जाता है, जो हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उनको, फिर वो उसका फायदा उठाते हैं और ये इंश्योर करते हैं गवर्नमेंट बॉडीज को डुप्लीकेसी ना हो। ये एक अच्छी चीज है और इसको और भी आगे बढ़ाने की जरूरत है, इसको ज्यादा संख्या में करने की जरूरत है कि ये कुछ ब्लॉक्स में न रहे, पूरे डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में, पूरे एरिया में ये चीज हो। एक्सपोजर्स दें उनको, जैसे कि कई सारे यात्री को, हम लोग भी जाते हैं तो हमें कुछ लर्न करने का मौका मिलता है, शहर में रहने वालों को जो गांव जाते हैं तो उनको सीखने का मौका मिलता है, वैसे ही उनको भी एक्सपोजर कराया जाए, क्योंकि कई बार उनको भी लगता है कि वो जो उनका आइडिया हो यूनिक है, लेकिन वो नहीं होता है, तो जब वो कहीं विजिट्स करते हैं तो उनके जो एग्जिस्टिंग आइडिया में भी कुछ यूनिकनेस आता है, तो वो एक्सपोजर्स ज्यादा मिलेगा उनको, तो वो ज्यादा आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। ओके, हमारी जो एज अ यात्री लास्ट डे फील हुआ कि कुछ चीजें ऐसी थी जो और होती तो और बढ़िया, जिसमें एक था कि हमने यात्रा जब विजिट्स किए तो विजिट्स का टाइम हमें लगा कि और ज्यादा होना चाहिए था, रिफ्लेक्ट करने का और बात करने का मौका मिलना चाहिए था एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के साथ, क्योंकि बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग था, सब लोग बहुत बढ़िया जॉब कर रहे हैं, अलग अलग हमने छोटे माइक्रो एंटरप्राइज भी देखे, मेजो एंटरप्राइज भी देखे, जो एक नेक्स्ट लेवल पे पहुंच गए जो करोड़ रुपए के बिजनेस कर रहे हैं। तो उन सब बिजनेसेस को एक्सप्लोर करने का मौका मिला, उनसे और बात करने का मौका मिलना चाहिए था हमें। इस तरह के और कुछ
No, that this is actually what we have just seen, that one, the kind of the amazing entrepreneurship skills which are developed at a small place in like Mirzapur, and the women entrepreneurs, especially that one, what's the courage and the motivation level that they have had, because in once kind of like an empowerment which has been like done maybe in 3 years time or 4 years time, that the level of their aspirational and as well as that achieving that kind of the goals which they just decide about that, and everything is very much participatory, and then they are owning it. So this one of the approaches, this methods or been taken by the department, by the team, is very much like appreciable. And then these kind of the things only scaling up the small businesses into a larger enterprises. So and some of the larger enterprise and also the people that who have just traveled along with us, we had one-on-one interaction with them, and then the level of understanding about their business, and then how to and what they need to be taking it up to just making it to a sustainable way, a very clear mindset. This is also one thing that which we have noticed in our journey, and also in with our interaction. We are very thankful for DA for this opportunity, and we see that one, these kind of the yatras should be like given in a more time, not in one time in a year, that is more time, so that one we can engage a lot of understanding and the learning from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratna ji, and thank you, Chandrabhushan ji, for sharing this your exciting journey. The we heard from the morning session, Mr. Shah said that we are as a country in the we are starting our the young stages, the early stages of our demographic dividend. I'd rather I'd probably disagree respectfully to say we are may not be necessarily on the early curve. We are fast approaching the peak. Before we know it, we'll have a big middle-aged population, and so we have really no time to lose to make sure that our young have the opportunities and the skills to capitalize on that. So thank you for sharing that how this has been being achieved at a local and micro level in Mirzapur. We really need probably many more such micro movements rather than scaling up. It is really replicating in different ways, in different geographies. Your emphasis on the need for hand-holding locally, so that local transformation can happen, and we can start seeing probably in the policy space, not just looking at ease of doing business, but the ease of entrepreneurship at the local and small scale level that needs to be created. How does that happen? How do policymakers support that to happen so that they can be really transformative change on the ground? With that, I'm going to call upon our third and final set of Yatri representatives, Jean and Shruti. Yeah, your presentation is up here. Okay.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and it was wonderful hearing about the experiences of our family. Actually, we're going to do something slightly different, is in that we're going to build on your points, because we have so many common experiences around ownership, the importance of local hand-holding, that we're going to stick, I guess, to where the energies and the enthusiasms were in our group. But before we start, a big thank you again to Development Alternatives for a wonderful experience, and everyone in our group is so excited and energized by this. We really enjoyed the holistic perspective. We would have conversations about the work, and someone would share research methodology that could enhance the insight to it. Someone would suggest something that they've learned in terms of practice from the ground 20 years ago. We'd have a conversation, or someone would share an insight from the evaluation, and it was a genuinely rich, transformative experience that we as a group really want to continue. And we were thinking, how do we make sure that this is not just one event, but it's a community and a network that works together as we go forwards to address these challenges and opportunities. So that's what Shruti and I are going to do, to talk about what we believe
some of the opportunities, the challenges, and the way forward are. We welcome and invite you to go along this journey with us.
Yeah, so thank you, Jean. So I believe I'm Shruti Agrawal and I'm working on happiness economics. Being a research scholar, it is a great opportunity for me to being in this yatra. And Bundelkhand was an amazing way that we have visited and gathered lots of insight into it. So learnings and opportunities are, of course, we have a huge scope that Bundelkhand have shown us. And I must say that Bundelkhand is, the women empowerment can be reflected by that place. And the women of that village, they are so active in their needs that they are looking for. And the DA, along with the TARAgram, is providing a huge, platform to them to come along with their problems and then how they are succeeding and resulting into something really very productive. You want to add on? Next slide, we can move. Yeah. So is it,
I think we skipped a slide.
okay, so it's about from the how we can take that DA interventions have played a huge role to scale this up. I believe that India is a major country which holds the young talent, and we have tremendous talents in India, great young minds that we have in India. So what we have gathered is to encourage those young minds in academic institute to take their ideas, what they have scaled up for the models that they have built for the framework that they have built, which might be of very low cost, and to motivate them and take them to the fields. And what we have seen how in the yatra we have seen how the people, the entrepreneurs are using the small scale materials, the natural resources that India provides, and turning them into a great way to succeed with the goals of SDGs that we are looking for. And it is not just fulfilling one goal, we are targeting all the 17 goals of SDGs. And I think DA and TARAgram is really doing really well to achieve all those 17 goals of SDGs.
Building on the enterprises that we saw, they were so inspiring and wonderful. But one of the things we think we should spend some time thinking about is perhaps how we get the right marketing to the entrepreneurs, because there are wonderful products we can pay those. I'm such a big fan of Fly Ash events, we cannot believe. And what we would like to do is think about how do we get those marketing and advertising skills to identify those markets for those products. And I think there is potential collaborations out there. So there are many creators in advertising who are really interested and concerned about climate now, who want to make a difference. Many institutes and commercial that really want to think about actually how do we as marketeers make a difference. So perhaps working to develop a curriculum whereby some of the challenges or the briefs that the entrepreneurs face are given to perhaps students, and the marketing plans can be developed to the enterprises and shared. So we're really leveraging the best of both insights and communities. Also, like the other groups, we had a really interesting conversation about scale, and like the fact that there are really bespoke projects that speak to those communities and address those needs. And we also noticed that because of desirability there, and what we came up with, again, like you, is that there are different programs and different pathways to scale. And so perhaps we need to spend some time meaning and mapping out what those pathways look like. Is it that we want commercial organisations to adopt the programs? Do we want to influence government to either fund the programs or to take on the programs themselves? Really thinking and unlocking those different chain of causalities to have an impact that we want to have. Is that something that I think there was lots of energy around convening around? And if that's something you'd like to take forward, so it's definitely a group of theatrics that would love to contribute to that and be like peer supporters to that work. And lastly, I think, as you know, we want to do work that's next. We encourage everyone to participate in it. But if you're interested in performing classes like an action learning set, we would be really keen on that. I used to work and speak to researchers and innovators on the issue scale within the European Commission, and they haven't got that cracked. So this is like a really important question that I think we could get lots of talent, insights, and expertise, and that combined with your purpose and the experience that you can bring, I think would be phenomenal for this agenda. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, so also in addition, I think there's always a circular causation. So instead, dissemination of knowledge from urban to rural, we should all can look forward for taking the knowledge of rural people to the urban sector, how they are utilizing the natural resources of India, how they are utilizing very small things that we may neglect in urban sector. So the dissemination of knowledge from urban to rural to urban area. And at the end, I would like to conclude that climate change is a cause that we have done. It's a fact for the causes that we have done. So, it's not about just a government organization or NGOs or NPO to work on this. It's about the individual awakening how I can be an asset for this country, for this global movement of SDGs and green economics, and contribute to the best of my knowledge and my actions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that is, yeah. Okay. So we went from urban Agra to peri-urban Mirzapur to rural Bundelkhand, and we saw all, or we saw a whole range of things. And I'm sure quite a few of us sitting in this team would have been saying, "Hi, hum yahan kyun gaye, wahan kyun nahi gaye?" तो हम वहां भी जाएंगे अगली दफा. And I hope there will be more such journeys. But before we close this session, I'm sure there will be some or the other who yatris from another journey to this, or those who've joined us today who may want to have a quick question, something burning inside you that you want to add. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm opening the floor for koi quick question, koi haath. Somebody, yes, right there. Can somebody please take a mic to?
Hi, I'm Deepthi, and I work for an organization called Udyogini. And I was very fascinated, by all, first of all, the idea of people going and actually looking, and sharing it here. I just wanted to, maybe not a question, but maybe a comment that when we are talking about the waste management, which, certainly is an issue, and the more, sophisticated we become, we will have more of these issues. So it's actually more of our issues than, people who are not making the waste so much. And yet they are the ones who probably work so hard in the value chains or in the supply chain. And I was thinking that the recommendations were really good, but I was thinking to myself that what does it take actually for me to segregate the waste at my own home? And, I think mostly women end up doing this job. And also because, I want my life easier because I'm also having a lot of other things. So I think, do we also look at the incentivizing of that? Because it's inherently going to go to women to do that job, and also the effort into segregating. So like, what is it that, I'm getting? I'm saying this because I think a lot of times we have to be, pushed more for the positive so that, we are encouraged to do. So that was one. On the other, since we work with women all, for 30 years, and the nano entrepreneurship, or whatever name that you call them, I just wanted to bring this point that, when we talk about women's entrepreneurship, this is their way of life. This is their livelihood. And I think a lot of times, what you were saying, that scaling and all, it's a big issue for a variety of other reasons. And again, gender plays a huge role in that. So I think maybe a deeper dive into that would probably help. Also just understanding what really blocks them. Ask me, would I go and set up an enterprise? I think I will be just really killed with my imposter syndrome, right? So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipti. I think that were good insights. Also, points that we picked up in Agra about the ease of segregation. The fact that everybody says, if you segregate, then you've actually done 50% of the job of the process, if you segregate at the source. And so that was really one of the things. And I'm sure the issue of looking at women and their, what really makes them come out, that would have come in discussion. And I'm sure in your notes also, it would be, yeah, but good point. Yeah. Any other quick inputs, suggestions, points, comments? Not yes to it. May I have a mic?
did you guys consider, when you're talking about scale, it's a real tough problem. How do you get to scale? There seems to be two schools of thoughts. One is rollout, and the other one is scale up. Did you guys consider in your trip that one of the big failures, I think, for getting to scale is because we keep trying to roll out?
To roll out, exactly.
I'm not going to answer that question, but I'm going to build on it. And there's also another thought. If you come from Silicon Valley or Bangalore, and you're very much the startup model, you'll always be like designed for scale. And I think those instincts about design and architecture and human behavior are perhaps something that we can bring into these conversations. So I don't have an answer to you, Stuart, but if anyone else does, we'd love to hear it. And I think I'm just adding another stakeholder into the mix, and you do an excellent job of bringing all these different expertise together. I think that's one thing to consider.
Absolutely. And I think in the context of this country, scale is not necessarily big. Scale may be the principles of having many, many small. And the support system for those many, many small, which will be may not be very different, but definitely different from each other. Because we are so contextually driven on the ground, and recognizing that we are contextual is a strength that we have. I think we should be looking at it. But with that, I think I'm getting a little nudge from the corner here. We are about 10 minutes late. Tea is served outside. Don't go away. We have a very exciting panel discussion, and I can see my esteemed panelists. Thank you, Vivaji, and I can see others as well. So we will be joined by the panelists who will comment on, I hope, and react to and guide us for future journeys. So tea is there. Can we have the doors open? Don't lock people in. Chai is outside. Thank you, Yatris. You deserve an applause before we go. All of us do.
We're about to start in a minute. May I request all the yatris to please join us inside. You could carry your chai and coffee here. I would request the DA staff to please help us coordinate. Dimple Muskan, could you please have yatris join us here inside? Muskan? I would request all the yatris to please join us inside. We are about to begin with the second half of Saar Sangam. Okay, we'll start with the second leg of Saar Sangam for the day. I would request everybody to be seated, please. Now, before the tea break, we had a very insightful discussion with the yatris, wherein we heard of their journeys in Agra, Bundelkhand, and Mirzapur, respectively. And boy, what a session that was. Thanks to Ms. Zina to also drive the discussion and summarize those beautifully. We now have a panel discussion on the theme of co-creating green and inclusive economies. We are starting with the panel discussion now. To join us for this discussion, may I call upon the stage Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, Chairman, Bihar State Pollution Control Board. Can we have a round of applause for him, please? We have here with us Dr. Suman Sahai, Chairperson, Gene Campaign. I would also like to call upon the stage Dr. Vibha Gupta, Chairperson, Magan Sangrahalaya Wardha. May I call upon Mr. Stuart Worsley, Country's Program Director, Green Economic Coalition, and Mr. Navneet Samayar, Head Future Skills, NASCOM. To moderate this discussion, I would again request Ms. Zina to help us out. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Saundarya. Thank you very much. Sorry for that misstep. We have with us, I think, Bahar, jo conversation ho rahi hai, that must be really, acha tum yahan gaye the, aur kya dekha? And I think those wo baatein hi nahi khatam ho rahi hain. So now we have to do another set of baatein. And we have in this next leg, some gurus with us. At least I consider all of you gurus with whom I have learned and journeyed, sometimes closely, sometimes from a distance, together, as like we mentioned in the morning, building our pathways for a green, inclusive, and just green economy. We have our esteemed panel who are scientists, social change leaders, business leaders, And but one thing they have in common is that they are all futurists with a vision, all futurists with an empathy for this, for humanity and for this planet. And I think that's a great combination to have. So thank you very much. A very, very brief introduction to our panelists, Dr. Ashok Kumar Ghosh, who is the chairman of the Bihar State Pollution Control Board. He's a professor and a head of department of the Mahavir Cancer Institute and Research Center, and also a member of the Regional Empowered Committee of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. Welcome, Dr. Ghosh, and thank you very much. We have learned a lot from you over the years of working in Bihar, and your support is really appreciated, and I hope we can continue to work together for many, many more years. Dr. Suman Sahai, Chairperson, Gene Campaign. She's had a distinguished scientific career in the field of genetics, recipient of the Padma Shri, the Burlag Award, the Outstanding Woman Achiever Award, the Birbal Sani Gold Medal, and the Order of the Golden Arc. She's the founder chairperson of the Gene Campaign, looking at research and advocacy, working on issues related to food, nutrition, and livelihoods, fundamental sort of aspects of our development. She's also chaired India's Planning Commission Task Force on agrobiodiversity and genetically engineered organisms for the 11th five-year plan. Followed then is Dr. Vibha Gupta, chairperson, Magan Sangrahalaya Institute. Also, I'd say not just, I mean, she brings with her a philosophy and thought which we have always been learning from. She's a Gandhian. She has been working with, she began working in Wardha with her father, Dr. Devendra Kumar, who founded the Center for Science for Villages in 1978, an institution that personally for me has given a lot of guidance to the work that we did on rural housing in our early days. So thank you, Vibhaji. For 40 years, Vibhaji has been working relentlessly in empowering rural women across 100 villages, 600 self-help groups, 34 new enterprises. She's an economist and has gained her PhD from IIT of Delhi with a focus on transfer of technology amongst rural women. So she has a very strong woman orientation, but with a very strong scientific temper behind it. Thank you so much for being with us. Stuart Worsley, thank you, friend, for coming back, joining us again on this journey. He's a country's program of the Green Economy Coalition, of which we happen to be a member. He leads a 9-country member hub program now of a coalition which is over 200 members strong worldwide. And we're proud to be part of that group that is working towards a green economy, a green, inclusive, and just economy. He has extensive expertise in facilitating system-wide change for development. He has led organizations and programs that address the changes in agriculture, natural resources, water, and sanitation. He's the co-author of the book Navigating Complexity in International Development. Thanks again for being with us, Stuart. Mr. Navneet Samir is the head of future skills in NASSCOM. IT always scares me a little bit. So he's the head of future skills. He has over 3 decades of rich business leadership experience. He's been one of the pioneers of the IT industry and was responsible for setting up and scaling the procurement and supply chain services offerings of Genpact from the very start. He's led the IBM Global Process Services, Customer Care and Tech Product Services business. And he's been leading a team of over 25,000 people across 23 centers in the country. So that's a huge management sort of thing behind you. And I'm sure the IT has a lot to do with it. A serial entrepreneur and has set up and scaled businesses cutting across supply chains, IoT, agriculture, tech, healthcare, retail, etc. Thanks, Navneet, for joining us. At this stage, we would like to gain from the experience and insights of our extremely, I'd say, experienced and thoughtful panel. But we did have a few questions that we had sort of circulated beforehand. Can I have some support to put them up? Sundarya, is it on the? It's here. Okay, great. So we have these three key questions that we had asked our panelists to look at, not limiting them to these, but looking at them and from their own experience, bringing insights on what can be done more, what is being missed and what is not being looked at. What have you been doing that we can learn from now? And maybe what we will do is I will just ask 5 minutes each, Dr. Ghosh, starting from you, to just reflect upon your experiences coming from Bihar, from the pollution control space, addressing the aspects of who are the actors in the transition we might be missing, and what are the trade-offs we are making. Can we not make those trade-offs? What may be those opportunities? How can policy learn from practice?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting here. And first of all, I congratulate Development Alternatives and Dr. Ashok Khosla for completing this 40 years wonderful journey, contributing towards society, welfare for society and other activities going along this. The question that you asked is very pertinent. And first of all, I would like to emphasize one point, that people think, and normally the concept is there, that knowledge is transferred only from the urban area to rural area. But that is not true for greener economy. It is two-way flow. There are so many knowledge, traditional knowledge that originated in rural background, and that is even effective very much today, but we have abandoned them. One example I would like to quote from Bihar. Earlier, Bihar is an agricultural state. Its economy is dependent on agriculture. And we had a very good system of irrigation that is known as Ahar Pan system that was used for cultivating the surface water. But then we shifted to groundwater after 80s and overburdened the groundwater and abandoned the traditional wisdom systems. And that led to changes in chemistry of the groundwater. And many contaminants came out, like arsenic and fluoride and so on and so forth. And that increased disease burden. So my suggestion is always there that traditional wisdom originating from rural background should not be abandoned. It should be strengthened by modern language. That is one thing that is very important. Second point that is very always there for green economy, that we have lots of work going on in the rural area. Small entrepreneurs, they're working over there. One thing missing that I always see, their linkage with the market. That is missing somewhere. There are so many good products. That is, in the localized area, it is produced, is generated, but they don't know how to market it. There's lack of connect between the marketing people and the rural green entrepreneurs. So there has to be some linkage so that this can be promoted. And equally important is a third point that is very significant about the green economy, that whenever you talk about green economy, it is not only the economic output, but the environmental damage also. You have to see the balance between the two, that whatever technology we are using, whatever technology we are introducing, how much productive they are economically and how much productive they are environmentally, or how much damaging they are. So we have to consider all these points for connect and transition between the two. And in Bihar, I travel a lot in rural area, and many times I get many ideas that is never seen in the urban area. So there has to be a dynamic system of flow of knowledge and information between rural versus urban and urban versus rural. Thank you very much.
Pointed out about the changes in the water extraction.
Yeah.
So in the changes in the water extraction, I mean, not looking at an unintended consequence, which may be very different from what we start with and may come out in very surprising ways in different places. And I think that's something, a thought of futures thinking perpetually on new technologies, new ways of working. Thanks for, sort of putting your finger on this, that as we develop with new technologies, even in the green economy space, there are those issues that we may have to keep at the back of our mind, that we will end up maybe 20 years down the line with some new problems, which we think we have, or which we've never thought of now, but we would be the creators of those. So thank you very much.
Just one line I would like to add. I will take 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Just rightly she said that whenever we introduce any new technology, we don't oversee the future 20 years and 30 years. One example I'll give you that I'm seeing in Patna. We have introduced lots of e-vehicles, three-wheelers. And on the roads, if you go to Patna today, you'll find hundreds of thousands of the e-vehicles using batteries. And all the e-rickshaws are right now, they're new. And as a chairman of Bihar State Pollution Control Board, I know that there's no mechanism for disposal of the old batteries as of now. So after 2-3 years, all the auto rickshaws will be old. And there will be need for replacement of the batteries. And nobody knows that what will happen to the old batteries. So you will be creating mountains of batteries and all. So, okay, if you have introduced e-rickshaw, that is good. It is cutting down the carbon emission. But what will happen if you dispose of all the batteries without any scientific method, then you are creating another problem. So these are the things that has to be noted always. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. In our rush to solve today's problems, we are creating tomorrow's new and more complicated ones. Dr. Sahai. Yes.
Thank you. Let me start with a word of congratulations to DA and a word of congratulations to the Yatris. I enjoyed very much listening to the presentations, because I think you said some very significant things that need to be carried forward. And I was telling Geetika, who I was sitting next to, that if you could put this up on your website, the kind of reports that have come up, be very useful for follow-up. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for flagging what I thought would be an important subject to touch upon, and that is indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge, let us not forget, is a technology. So when we talk about technologies in the AI/ML space, let us also talk about technologies that have existed before that. These are as innovative, as revolutionary, and as relevant to their potential consumers as the technologies that are being created as we talk. There are issues with indigenous knowledge and indigenous technologies that we need to address, and much of that is in the policy space. But let me flag a few examples, a few concrete examples of how they can contribute to the green economy. And more importantly, we keep talking about rural-urban divide, etc. Make the rural community, who are normally or almost exclusively, the owners of these technologies without intellectual property control, but they are the owners of these technologies, for them to be in charge, for them not to be merely consumers of a technology developed outside for their benefit as consumers, but as owners of technologies which are extremely relevant today. Climate change. One of the ways of ensuring or minimizing the damage of climate change to agriculture, which we now know is going to be significant, is to look at genetic diversity. Genetic diversity of crop plants is a huge asset that we're sitting on, but not utilizing. What you're doing is you're wanting to make genetically engineered crops on which is not your asset base, which is not your knowledge base, and which is not proven to be a safe and wonderful product. As against that, if you want to adapt to climate change, you have an enormous amount of genetic diversity at your disposal, and not just genetic diversity, but the indigenous knowledge associated with that genetic diversity. And let me explain this through an example. If you and I walk through a forest and see a plant, a creeper with yellow flowers, we admire its beauty and we walk on. An Adivasi who lives in that area will look at that vine with yellow flowers and say, this is a treatment for glaucoma. Another Adivasi might walk through the same forest or a different forest and see a plant, a shrub with blue flowers. You and I will look at that, take a picture, move on. But the Adivasi will say, here is a cure for diabetes. This is the power of indigenous knowledge. This is the power of indigenous technology to contribute to a sustainable, equitable, and green economy. You are making and recognizing the masters of that technology and allowing them, creating the space for them to contribute to your and my welfare in good health. And it's so easily done. All the retention of knowledge systems and the sustainability of utilizing resources. Let me give you another example that to show you how simple it is. You know, in the Andamans, there's a tribe called the Organises. The Organises hunt, and they hunt wild boar because that is their preferred meat. When an Onge tribe or an Onge individual has hunted in an area, he or she, it's normally a he, will break off the twig of a branch and leave it hanging. So no other Onge will then hunt in that area till that twig dries and falls off. Now here, what could be simpler to maintain sustainability than this? So that's how sustainable it is. To talk about markets, what can genetic diversity in crop plants give you apart from the ability to cope with crisis? What in terms of marketable products can it give you? We have analyzed, we have also collected, when I say we, I mean Gene Campaign and all the wonderful people who work in it, the traditional rice varieties of Eastern India, because Eastern India is the birthplace more or less of rice, and India is the center of origin, and characterized its properties. How do you characterize those properties? Not really in a lab, and not to begin with. You ask people. You ask the people who use those varieties, and it is those people who will tell you, this is a long duration variety, this is a short duration variety. And please don't forget to ask the women who are using those varieties in their homes, because she will tell you, this one cooks faster, this one takes longer to cook. This variety of rice, when you cook it in the morning, it stays till the evening. Here's a potential product in the making. And this one, if you eat it in the morning, you're not hungry till evening, which means its starch profile, its glycemic index. So a marketable product that you get out of this, apart from saving your skin from climate change impacts, is a rice or a series of rices for diabetics. There's a market out there. And so similar is the pharmaceutical sector. The big pharma, look at big pharma's big blockbuster drugs. Most of them have their origin in traditional medicinal plants and the knowledge that is associated with them. Nobody walks through the forest and says, this yellow flower is for glaucoma. Somebody told them it's for glaucoma. So you have a plant called Rauwolfia serpentina, which is, I use that example because it's so well known, for this huge drug to control blood pressure. And reserpine, which is the active alkaloid principle, is what does it. Now, we've known that forever. We've known forever that Phyllanthus amaris is a good treatment for liver. It's Ayurveda and the traditional systems of medicine that exist in other countries. Most of them have demolished theirs, but they still exist in countries like, for example, China, which has been very intelligent and has incorporated that knowledge system into their healthcare and has created products. Biopiracy consists of stealing indigenous knowledge and making blockbuster drugs through the pharma sector. Those are marketable products. So you have a huge technology sitting right in your backyard, which will help you to cope with your health burden, which will help you to cope with the ravages of climate change and the fact that your agriculture is going to take a hit when monsoons are disturbed, when the temperature profile is disturbed. How are you going to cope? Wheat, which is India's and a lot of other Asian countries' winter crop, is going to stop producing if the temperatures rise. We know that. What are we doing about it? You look at genetic diversity, you will find more heat-tolerant varieties. Don't go on some on a not so nice journey to try and find trehalose through genetic engineering to engineer into wheat plants to try and make them more temperature tolerant. It hasn't worked so far, and it's not going to work. And it is the silliest way of solving a problem. Just look into your gene pool. Just keep looking, and you'll find it. And by the way, if you're looking at wheat, you won't look at India, you'll look at Iraq. Because the birthplace, the so-called center of origin of wheat, is roughly the Tigris-Euphrates basin. So what I'm saying here is that when we're looking at technologies, let's look at other than the technologies that are being invented today. When we're looking at making a green economy, let us look at products that are much more sustainably made with the least possible impact on the environment, negative impact on the environment, because our ancestors were not idiots. They tried many things. Some didn't succeed and were abandoned. Those that did succeed were carried forward. So the body of indigenous knowledge, the body of indigenous technologies that we have at our disposal after a few generations are time-tested. And so I would say that I see a lot of answers to the questions that you've posed here in having the wisdom to look at the technologies, the knowledge systems that we already have, and to see the market opportunities in the product ranges that the market is asking for today, whether it is food, whether it is pharma, and whether it is a lot of building technologies that people before us had already understood and developed and invented. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sai, of pointing to us that we should be looking at the value of resources and of systems that we have had and maybe at the danger of losing if we don't value them. But thank you also for pointing out, I think in that one example of the stick, that recognition of limits to consumption, recognition of the regenerative capacities of our natural resources is something as important as recognizing the economic value and commercializing it. Otherwise, we're going to have big trouble. So thank you very much for those two very useful examples to carry forward. And I'm going to now jump to Stuart and request him to, if you want to use the mic.
I think I'm going to go for the lucky thing. What an amazing presentation, Doctor. Thank you for that. The insights you gave. So I'm going to try and copy you and stand up here, and maybe I can say something as sensible as you've just said. So thank you for that. Who are the actors in the transition? We've been talking here today about whole systems. And our systems of this world are incredibly complex. That means when they're complex, we cannot predict what's going to happen. We have to engage with them and see what emerges. And I think we need to understand, if we're going to be talking about who are the key actors in the transition, you've got to understand the people who actually see and read the system the best. Now, to build on what has been said already, the people who actually understand the best about failing systems are the people whom those systems are failing. If you go to the margins of society, if you go to the edges of society where people are living in pain, their insights as to why that pain exists are far more perspicacious, far more insightful, they're far more precise, because they can tell you, in this place, at this time, we are in trouble because of this. Within the Green Economy Coalition, we've been working around the idea built up by Sir Edward Schumacher, the idea that small is beautiful. That if you look at small community organization. And one of the key forms of small community organization is, in fact, the community enterprise. Small enterprises who step forward and say, we have a problem in this place. We have an insight in this place. We can do something about it. We will step forward into this place. So I think the first point I want to make is, who are the actors in the transition? There are many, but we need to start and finding out who those actors are by starting with the people who are at the margins and experience the greatest pain. Let them tell you who to go and include within your systems. If you invest at the margins of society, you will very quickly obtain a critical mass of movement. If people who are able, at the margins of society, are able to solve their problems and are able to interact with one another through learning and through networks, what you find is over time you build this idea of a movement. I was at the station yesterday, and as we came out of the train, we are descended on by 1,001 coolies. And they want your business, and they come in and they grab your bag and they want to put it on their head. Now, I bet you if you go into those coolie systems, they've got an order. They've got an understanding of exactly who gets what, how much are you going to charge, what are the rules that you can do. If one coolie, I imagine, was to start stealing from a customer, the other coolies might jump on him because they say, you're destroying my business. If you look within the existing networks that are already manifest by people at the margins, you will find insights as to where to invest. I was just talking with Dr. Khosla a minute ago. We were talking about the office down in Bundelkhand. We sat in Bundelkhand in a wonderful facility, having a yatra experience. And it occurred to us while we were sitting there, do you know, perhaps we shouldn't be doing this once a year. Perhaps we should be doing this possibly once a month. Maybe without the fancy slide projectors, maybe without the fancy hotels, and maybe without the cost and the expense and the meals, but we could begin to pull people together, perhaps in the idea around a platform, and keep the yatra idea beginning to go forward, where you start beginning to bring those people at the margins and scientists and policymakers and business people to begin to come into that space. And I would just put that idea perhaps as an idea for you to consider. One more thing I just wanted to say, there was this question about trade-offs that were asked. What are the trade-offs in the transition? Yeah, there are going to be trade-offs. We live in a world where the only thing that matters now is money. And if it doesn't make any money, it doesn't matter. We heard in Bundelkhand some data. Gatika, you produced some data that had been crunched by Dr. Anil Markandia. And he cites that you got 135-fold return on investment. Let me repeat that, 135, or let's put that in economic terms, 13,500%. When you begin to evaluate the investment returns from the investment put in, it depends on how you measure it. And if you only measure the money that comes out of it, hey, guess what? The returns aren't that great. If you measure it in terms of the natural capital that has been gained, if you measure it in terms of the social capital that is being gained, you get a return on investment of something like 1,000. So I get that right, 13,500, 135-fold returns. Now, I think we have to do better. I think we have to do better to actually make sure that the investment community out there is actually beginning to understand what is happening. And the trade-off here is that we're going to have to say no to money, and we're going to have to say yes to the environment, and we're going to have to say yes to society. I believe that in the trade-off, in the battle between economics and biodiversity and climate and social health, economics always wins, and it's not fair. If we continue like this, the poly crisis, the poly shambles, however you want to put it, is simply going to grow and get worse. We have reached a situation now on our planet. We are no longer working effectively. Our systems are no longer working effectively. And I think it's because we're focusing too much on just the money. So I think it's time to measure what matters. I'm going to stop there because I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Returns from investment, not just quantum, but who gains those investments. And I think what was unsaid, and I think underlying in your thing, is that we don't see the fact that the ecological returns are actually returns to each one of us, and that financial returns are not necessarily, and in fact are never going to be returns to each one of us. So financial returns are going to be unequal, whereas ecological social returns are actually going to spread whole of society. And we don't really realize that. Even those who are investing don't think that those returns are valuable enough for them. So thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for the suggestion that we probably need to have those spaces and those platforms where those journeys can happen all the time. Policy making has become a very, slam bam process. We are not looking at policy making as a continued process of learning and feeding back. And probably those spaces and those journeys are necessary so that a continued feedback can happen. And hopefully there will be a response and a reaction back from the policymakers. Some of us sit in those policy-making spaces. I think our responsibility to shake them up much more. With that, I am going to call upon Navneet. Jump to you before I come to Dr. Vibha. You want to speak from there? Go ahead.
I'll probably make the change. So, I was actually listening to Dr. Sahai, and, she talked about the blue flower. And it just struck me that technology is as much a blue flower. And unless the two flowers meet, we have a problem. And I'm talking as a technologist. I represent, just a quick introduction. I represent FutureSkill, which is a Government of India, Ministry of IT and NASSCOM initiative to create a pool of IT professionals who are digitally skilled for the future. So there was a study which was conducted by NASSCOM and BCG, which said 6 years down the line, almost 70% of us will not be doing the jobs we're doing right now. And if we don't start changing ourselves today, we will probably end up being redundant. And therefore, to de-risk our futures, we needed to do something. And one of that was to democratize IT. So IT has traditionally been a domain of a very limited bunch of people. And I'll share a few numbers to give you a sense of how the policymakers are thinking. So it's been traditionally a bunch of, outsourcing companies which are working for, a few companies in the US and wherever else. A study was conducted and it was figured out that if India has to be a $5 trillion economy, technology will be $1 trillion contributor in that. And here's how that breaks up. $150 billion of that trillion will come from the traditional IT companies, the ones that you know of, the Wipros, the Infosys, and so on and so forth. Another $350 billion will come from hardware, which is the mobile manufacturing and so on and so forth. $500 billion, which is $500 billion, will come from areas that we have not even ventured out to, which is the industry, healthcare, agriculture, what Dr. Sahai talked about, medicine, bringing traditional medicine into the mainstream. That's where Government of India is looking at real push for technology. And so my role as the head of Future Skills is to democratize knowledge. So we've reached out to close to about 10,000 colleges across the country. We have about 1 million subscribers, which is way too low, if we look at the scale of the problem we are facing. And I'm going to talk about 3 specific things that we probably can do in order to support the agenda that you're driving. I mean, I'm much of an outlier in this agenda, but whatever little I could contribute. So Number one, make blue flowers be. Technology is probably one single tool that can democratize pretty much any scale and sustainability effort that we take across any initiative that we do. Number two is it has to be responsible. So as policy makers and as policy watchdogs, we need to keep an eye out, and we do that as NASSCOM very, very strongly. We need to keep an eye out on, responsible AI, responsible IoT, responsible application of technology, responsible design thinking. Sometimes you can, the design thinking that Dr. Ghosh talked about, pardon my use of the word, but that is irresponsible thinking. Before you think of what to do with the batteries, you flood the roads with, EVs. I drive an EV incidentally. And I'm sorry, Dr. Ghosh, but I need to figure out and think of what I'll do with that battery 8 years down. So that's responsible design, which is missing in the way we think. We are very siloed in our design. And number three is, how do we then put it all together and use technology to scale and sustain? So I'll share. I'll end with a couple of very interesting examples that we face. So we touch, K to 12 and colleges across every stream. So not just engineering. So all the traditional headsets that technology means engineering, we are trying to bust that. So for example, Karnataka State Higher Education Corporation has mandated that all its graduate students, irrespective of whether they are BCom, law, history, or engineering, will have a course on digital fluency embedded in the curriculum. And there'll be permanent credits for that. There will be a course on artificial intelligence foundation for all the students, irrespective of what they are studying, graduating on in the second year, and cybersecurity in the third year. Now that is change. And that is where we are trying to push the flowers to be. I'll come to the examples. One big example. I can't take the name of the hospital chain because they are a very famous hospital chain. Everyone in the room knows of them. They are working in tuberculosis eradication. So how they used to work is they would take a truck to a certain rural area. They will have their portable X-rays. They'll take X-rays. The X-rays will be transmitted back to the radiologist. The radiologist will take 24 hours to read the X-rays, come back. It takes a lot of effort to bring 800 people to get their X-rays done. Come back saying, you know what, these 20 out of this 800 are actually potential tuberculosis patients. You should do something about it. By the time the radiologist report comes, these 20 have disappeared. So the entire effort is wasted. What do? They figured an AI tool. I was talking to the CIO of this chain. They figured an AI tool which, surprise, surprise, reads 20% better than the doctor, more accurate than the doctor, and gives results in 30 seconds. So then and there, you know that this person is a potential tuberculosis case, and you start treating the person. You don't let him go. So that's the power of what we can do. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, I was talking to Dr. Ghosh. I'm really proud of this one because I was personally involved in this. So there is this school in, before that, let me just back off a little. So, as an education system across, there's certain things that we are never taught. And those are questions that get asked on day one of your job. Two of those most important things, innovation and design. You go to an engineering college, there's no course on innovation. There's no course on design. And you get to work, and the first thing your boss says, you got to think innovative. You're young, you bring, how do I think innovative? I haven't been even told what it means. So we've introduced design thinking and innovation from K to 12. And this is, I'm going to shut up after this. This we did at a school where we had children of underprivileged, children of people who are not, that well off. And there was this undercurrent that we felt in the school where the children had this feeling that, I'm not as good as the Shri Ram school in Gurgaon, or I'm not as good as the DPS. We said, today we will only write down on the blackboard all the good stuff that we have, that none of those other kids have. Trust me, that was the most powerful day for me personally and for all those children. And they had so much to write. The blackboard was full of stuff that none of those children from privilege, so-called privilege, come with, that they had. So, it's a matter of how we change perspectives at scale in order for us to embrace all of the nice changes that you're talking about. And if you can do that, I think we sorted it. Thanks.
Thank you, Navneet. I think some very powerful thought points. What do we know that we have? And how do we value that? And how do we use it? I think that's becoming like a common theme I am seeing from different perspectives. But you talked about digital and AI literacy. I hope tree literacy and water literacy and secondary resource literacy also forms part of our education, which we are losing. Just a very little example from where we were in Agra, where they have put RFID tags on 350,000 homes to track garbage collection and not yet garbage segregation. We also heard that many families actually pulled those tags out of their homes and threw them away because they were very scared. There is a trust issue with data. And when you talked about responsible application design thinking, I think this whole issue of what are you going to do with my information is a question that we have to answer to the citizens as we go ahead. So with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Vibha.
मुझे कहा गया था जो लगता है बोल देना। तो एक तो मैं हिंदी में बोलने वाली हूँ क्योंकि मुझे अंग्रेजी में बहुत ठीक से बताना नहीं आएगा अपनी बात। तो मैं चाहूंगी आप उनके साथ बैठे ताकि एकदम नितिन जी ने जो कहा बहुत ठीक है, टेक्नोलॉजी सचमुच चाहिए और यदि हम बहुत अवेयर हो जाए, जागरूक हो जाए तो टेक्नोलॉजी काफी कुछ मदद कर सकती है। पर मैं एक दूसरी तरफ जा रही हूँ, जैसे बहुत बार कहा जाता है जॉब एम्प्लॉयमेंट। मैं जहाँ से आती हूँ वहाँ पे 50% लोग जॉब एम्प्लॉयमेंट जानते ही नहीं है। उनको साल में एक बार पैसा मिलता है या 6 महीने में एक बार पैसा मिलता है और आदिवासियों को 3 महीने में एक बार पैसा मिलता है। उनको हर दिन पैसा मिलना पता ही नहीं। मजदूरों को छोड़ दिया जाए तो किसान को मिलता है, वो आज बोता है, उसको 6 महीने बाद उपज निकलती है, उसको पैसा मिलता है। तो हम एक ऐसी इकोनॉमी के साथ डील कर रहे हैं जो डेली अर्नर्स नहीं है और जिनका रिस्क पोटेंशियल हमसे बहुत ज्यादा है। आज मैंने बोया, कल क्या आएगा पता नहीं है मुझे। आदिवासी को आज मिलेगा, कल फ्लावरिंग होगी, पता नहीं उसे। तो हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि हम जिस इकोनॉमी की बात कर रहे हैं वहाँ एम्प्लॉयमेंट जॉब्स है ही नहीं। हम एक ऐसी इकोनॉमी की बात कर रहे हैं जहाँ पे फ्री फ्लो ऑफ मनी है ही नहीं। तो मुझे लगता है कि एक बार हम उसके बारे में सोचना शुरू करेंगे तो हमारे तरीके बदलने लगेंगे। दूसरा मुझे ये कहना है कि हम बहुत कुछ कर जाते हैं पर ये नहीं समझ पाते कि उसका क्या असर गांव पे होगा। मैं आपको छोटी बात बताती हूँ। हम लोग ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग का काम करते हैं, कपड़ा बनाते हैं हम लोग। तो हमारे पास ब्लॉक्स नहीं थे। हमें लगा कि हमारे गांव से 25 किलोमीटर दूर एक छोटा सा गांव है जहाँ पे बड़े बड़े झाझम दरियां जो क्या कहते हैं महफिलों में लगती हैं वो बनाते थे। तो हमने ये लगा कि वहां से हम ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग सीखेंगे। वहां गए, पता चला कि 25 साल से वो ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग का काम खत्म हो गया है और गांव वालों ने अपने ब्लॉक्स खत्म कर दिए हैं। कारण सिर्फ ये था कि वहां एक बहती नदी थी जिस पर ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग की जाती थी। नदी पर बांध बना, पानी रुका, उनके हाथ से सारा काम चला गया और ट्रेडिशनल बहुत अच्छे ऑर्गेनिक कलर्स के ब्लॉक प्रिंटर्स चले गए। और जैसे सुमन ने कहा कि उसके साथ उसकी टेक्नोलॉजी, साइंस सब चली गई। उसी तरह एक 7 रुपए के कपड़े की कहानी है। सरकार ने तय किया 7 रुपए की साड़ियां वो सस्ती साड़ियों की तरह बेचेंगे। हमारे गांव था जिसमें बहुत ही बड़े कारीगर थे, कलाकार थे और बहुत अच्छा कपड़ा बनाते थे। उनके यहाँ कोई सरकारी आदमी गया, उसने कहा भैया हम 7 रुपए की साड़ियां बना रहे हैं, हम आपसे खरीद लेंगे सारा, तो सारे गांव को लगा कि बस मजा आ गया, तो पैसे एक साथ मिल जाएंगे, क्योंकि यहाँ एक एक साड़ियां बेचने से अच्छा तो ये बेचें। उन्होंने कर्जे लिए, 7 रुपए की साड़ी के लिए बहुत सारा धागा लिया, बनाया। ये सरकारी बंदा वापस आए ही नहीं गाँव में, इन्हें पता नहीं वो कौन था और किसने उनसे बात की, और उनकी हालत ये हो गई कि वो साड़ियां लेकर बैठे रहे, सालों साल कोई आया नहीं, कर्जदार हो गए थे। उन्होंने, सब लोगों ने अपने कर्जे जला दिए। हमारे यहाँ कर्जे को यदि पैर भी लग जाए, लूम को यदि पैर भी लग जाए, तो आपको माफ नहीं करते, उनका भगवान है। उन लोगों ने जब अपने कर्जे जलाए, इसका मतलब है कि उन्होंने अपनी आत्मा को जला दिया, उन्हें अपने पूरे सिविलाइजेशन, अपने साइंस टेक्नोलॉजी को जला दिया। गांव ऐसे खत्म हो जाते हैं। मेरे गांव में रात के समय पानी दिया जाता है खेती के लिए, और हमारा जो गांव है वो कोबरा इन्फेस्टेड है, बहुत कोबरा रहता है। सारे जवान लोग रात को इसलिए मर जाते हैं क्योंकि उनको रात को कोबरा दिखता नहीं है, और शहर वालों को गांव दिखता नहीं। तो मेरा ये कहना है कि क्या हम ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं ला सकते, जैसे मैं आपसे कहूंगी कि आप सुबह भी पानी दें या शाम को पानी देते हैं, तो कोई तरीका निकालें कोबरे के लिए। मैं इसलिए आपको कहना चाहती हूँ कि हम उस दौड़ की बात कर रहे हैं जहां पे औरतें चप्पल में सेफ्टी पिन लगा के भागती हैं। ये देश भाग नहीं सकता है जब तक हमारे पास हालत ये है कि हमारे पास अच्छे जूते तक नहीं है। मैं इसलिए जंप कर रही हूँ क्योंकि मेरी बात कहने के लिए मुझे 3 दिन लगेंगे अपने दुख से सुनाने के लिए। पर ये एक ऐसा देश है जहां पर जो दुनिया के सबसे बढ़िया जूते बनाता है, यहाँ के लेदर शूज हर जगह जाते हैं। हम चाइनीज आर्टिजन्स को लाके अपने चमड़े से जूते बनाते हैं। पर एक ऐसा देश है जिसमें काम करने वाले लोग जो कीचड़ में, कांटों में, रेत में काम करते हैं, उनके पास अच्छे जूते नहीं है, तो क्या भागेंगे वो। तो मेरा सब आपसे कहना है कि गांव धीरे धीरे खत्म हो रहा है। शहर के बढ़ने की इच्छा में गांव खत्म हो जाए, ऐसी हमारी इच्छा भी है। खेती खत्म हो जाए, लोग शहर में आ जाए, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर बढ़ जाए, ये हो ही नहीं सकता है। इस देश को इनकी खेती की, इनकी बागबानी की, इनके जंगलों को हमें बचाना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वही है एक तरीका इस बड़े देश को काम देने का। There's no way to generate employment unless you really fortify these fields. तो मैं आपको बताना चाहती हूँ कि हमारे देश में बेसिक्स ही नहीं है। मतलब मेरे गांव में हम दाल भी बाहर से खरीद रहे हैं। हमारे यहाँ 60% जो खाने का तेल है, हम तेली देश है, हम पैदा हुआ बच्चा और मरने तक तेल ही तेल खाते रहते हैं। मालिश का तेल, इसका तेल, उसका तेल, जानवरों को भी हम तेल खिलाते हैं। ये देश यदि 50 से 60% तेल विदेश से खरीद रहा है, तो इससे बड़ी गरीबी नहीं हो सकती। और ये सारा तेल है सोयाबीन, कनोला, पामोलिव, तेल है क्या? ये लुब्रिकेंट्स थे। सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के समय आपने बना लिया, पर अभी भी हमें खिला रहे हो भैया। और उसके पीछे आप यदि मेरे गांव में देखेंगे तो मेरे पास एक फोटो है 20 साल पहले की हमारे गांव की औरतों की, छरछरा बदन, लंबे बाल, सब वो सारी इतनी मोटी हो गई हैं। ओबेसिटी, डायबिटीज, हार्ट प्रॉब्लम, हर घर। गांव कभी बीमार नहीं पड़ता था, पूरा गांव बीमार है। और ये सब तेलों के लिए। मैंने तो कभी नहीं देखा कि संसद में कभी ये सब्जेक्ट निकला हो कि ये तेल प्रधान देश कैसा अपना सोना चांदी बेचकर तेल मंगा रहा है विदेश से। और हम इसलिए नहीं हो पा रहे क्योंकि हमारे जंगल टीक के हैं, हमारे जंगल बांस के हैं, हमारे जंगलों में खाद्य पदार्थ है ही नहीं जानवरों के लिए। तो वो सीधे आते हैं आपके खेत में, आपका खेत खत्म करते हैं, क्योंकि वो खाएंगे कहाँ से। तो आपके जितने ट्यूबर्स हैं, जितने भी मूंगफली है, दूसरी चीजें, ये जानवर खा रहे हैं। हमें अपने गांव को बचाना पड़ेगा। यदि गांव नहीं बचे तो आप एम्प्लॉयमेंट की बात करिए, आप इंटरप्राइजेस की बात करिए, कुछ आपके हाथ में आने वाला नहीं। सॉरी, आई विल कंटिन्यू। हाँ क्योंकि मैं वो क्वेश्चन आंसर को आंसर ही नहीं कर सकती, क्योंकि मेरे सवालों के अभी तक मेरे पास जवाब उस तरह से नहीं है। और फिर मैं आपको बताती हूँ कि खेती के बारे में 2-3 चीज बताना चाहूंगी कि खेती को हमने मजाक समझ रखा है। सुमन तो बता सकेगी किस तरह से हमारे इंडिजिनस सीड्स जा रहे हैं। अभी जैसे हम तेल स्वराज्य पे काम कर रहे हैं, बीज स्वराज्य पे काम कर रहे हैं, कल हम जूता स्वराज्य पे भी काम करेंगे। पर मुझे आपसे कहना है कि इस खेती को भैया प्यार से देख तो लो एक बार, है क्या ये चीज। हमारी आदत हो गई है हर चीज में पैसा देखने की, और हमने हमेशा पैसे को दुय्यम माना है। हमारी सभ्यता में यात्रा का मतलब ये होता था कि आप बिना कुछ लिए अपने कपड़ों पर निकल पड़े। सिर्फ आपने जो कपड़े पहने वो, उसके साथ कुछ भी नहीं, ना आपका नाम, ना आपकी जाति, ना आपका पैसा। यात्रा का मतलब होता था कि जो जहां रुकेंगे उसके लिए आप मेहमान हैं, वो आपको खिलाएगा, पिलाएगा, सुलाएगा और दूसरे दिन की यात्रा की तैयारी कर देगा। आप उसे आपसे नहीं पूछेगा आप किस जाति के, आपसे नहीं पूछेगा आपका पास पैसा कितना है, क्योंकि उसका धर्म है कि वो आपको खिलाएगा। जब हम यात्राओं वाले लोग हैं तो हम कब से पैसों की बात करने लगे, हर चीज मॉनेटरी टर्म्स में, हर चीज हम पैसे में गिनेंगे तो ये देश कभी कभी भी अमीर नहीं हो सकता, हमेशा ये गरीब रहेगा। हमारे गांव में हम लोगों ने तय किया कि ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की डेफिनेशन आप नहीं तय करेंगे, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की सर्टिफिकेशन हमें आपसे नहीं चाहिए। यदि प्राकृतिक खेती है तो प्रकृति बताएगी कि वो खेती प्राकृतिक है कि नहीं। यदि आपके खेत में कितनी तरह की तितलियां आई, कितनी तरह की मधुमक्खियां आई, कितनी तरह के कीड़े मकोड़े आए, कितने तरह के केंचुए आए, आपकी पृथ्वी प्रकृति बताएगी कि हाँ भैया तुम ऑर्गेनिक हो। तो मेरा ये कहना है कि गांव के हिसाब से, उनकी भाषा से आप समझना सीखिए कि गांव आपके कारण मर रहा है। आपकी जो वैल्यू सिस्टम्स है, आपने जो, आप मतलब मैं भी, हाँ, हमने जो वैल्यू सिस्टम्स दिए हैं, हमने जो डेफिनेशंस दी हैं, उसके कारण गांव कभी भी समृद्ध नहीं हो सकता। जैसे नितिन जी ने बताया कि बोर्ड पर लिखा भैया तुम्हारे पास क्या क्या ताकतें हैं वो लिखो, बोर्ड भर गया उनकी ताकतों से। हम हमारी हमेशा उनके बोर्ड पर लिखी हुई ताकतों को मिटा रहे हैं। इस तरह से ये देश नहीं चल सकता। तो आप कहेंगे कि दो चीजें मैं बता के खत्म करूंगी कि आप पूछे कि भाई आप लोग किस तरह का काम कर रहे हैं। ठीक है, आपने बता दिया ये भी गलत है, वो भी गलत है, वो भी गलत है। तो सबसे पहले तो हमने काम शुरू किया कि हम मधुमक्खियों को बचाएंगे। ये सारी जो जंगल की मधुमक्खियां हैं उसको निकालने का तरीका जो आदिवासियों का है वो मक्खियों को मारने का। पहले बहुत होती थी मधुमक्खियां, अब तो आप देश रहे विश्व में मधुमक्खियां खत्म हो रही। मधुमक्खियां खत्म हुई तो जंगल और खेत खत्म होने वाले। तो हमने एक ऐसा तरीका निकाला कि बिना मधुमक्खी मारे आप बहुत अच्छा शहद निकाल सकते हैं। तो एक टेक्नोलॉजी हमने डेवलप की। और पर तब फिर पॉलिसी की गड़बड़ आती है, क्योंकि हर फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट आदिवासियों को चोर मानता है और चोर के पीछे जैसे पुलिस लगती है वैसे उनके पीछे लगती है। पर आदिवासियों के जंगल है, वो उनकी भाषा जानता है, उन सब चीजों को, जैसे उन्होंने नीला फूल बताया, वो नीले पीले फूल सब जानता है। पर हमने उनको उनकी बात ना समझते हुए अपना विज्ञान लगाया और अपने हिसाब से जंगल बनाए। झाड़ू की सफाई के बारे में हम लोगों का बहुत गहरा समझ है। दो तरह की सफाइयां होती हैं, एक होता है अंदर से बाहर और एक होता है बाहर से अंदर। तो गांधी जी की जो झाड़ू थी वो बाहर से अंदर की झाड़ू थी। जो सुनार होता है या लोहार होता है, जो सुनार होता है या चांदी वाला आदमी होता है, वो झाड़ू अंदर की तरफ लगाता है, कहीं उसका सोना चांदी बाहर ना चला जाए। हमारी झाड़ू होती है अंदर से बाहर की, कि गंदगी पड़ोसी पे चली जाए, हम साफ रहें। और हम लोगों ने झाड़ू को और गांधी जी के चश्मे को बना दिया सफाई आंदोलन का एक रूप। गांधी जी जब थे तो तब गंदगी थी नहीं, ना ई गार्बेज था, ना प्लास्टिक था, ना कुछ था, सादा सूदा था, गड्ढे में डाला और कंपोस्ट बना लिया। हम आज के गंदगी की बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें मैं चाहूंगी आपको कहना और रिक्वेस्ट करना, और आप सबको जो पॉलिसी लेवल पे काम कर रहे हैं, कि इस देश पे कोई भी आदमी गंदगी को हाथ नहीं लगाएगा। इस देश में गंदगी को हाथ लगा के आप एक जाति बन जाए, ये नहीं हो सकता। आपको दूर रखा जाए और आप उसकी थाली में ना खा सकें, ये नहीं हो सकता। हमें इसको टोटली मॉडर्नाइज करना पड़ेगा। हम इसको इतना ज्यादा मॉडर्नाइज करें कि दुनिया देखे कि गार्बेज मैनेजमेंट की किस तरह से मॉडर्नाइजेशन से इस देश में कई चीजों को संभाला है, गंदगी को संभाला है, रिसाइकिल किया है, आपने अपने को एनरिच किया है, उसके साथ इस एक बहुत गहरे दाग को हमने मिटाया। तो मुझे आप कृपया आगे से ना बुलाएं बोलने के लिए, क्योंकि 5 मिनट में मैं बोल नहीं सकूंगी। और सिर्फ मुझे कहना है, यही कहना है आपसे कि हम गांव को गांव की आंखों से देखें। इसमें अभी जिस चीज के लिए हम लड़ रहे हैं वो है कि हमारा सबसे बड़ी संपदा है कि ये गांव देश जो है वो गोबर और घास प्रधान देश है। इस देश की पूरी संपत्ति यहाँ का गोबर रहा है। और गोबर मतलब एक गाय का गोबर नहीं, हर तरह के गोबर में बहुत सारे गुण हैं। एक गोबरोलॉजी पे पूरी एक विज्ञान निकल सकता है, इतना जबरदस्त है गोबर का विज्ञान। गांव वाला पहुंचता है, समझता है। और उसके साथ घास, ये दोनों खत्म हो रहे हैं, बहुत तेजी से खत्म हो रहा है। यदि हमने इसको नहीं बचाया तो मैं आपको अच्छे से लिख के दे सकती हूँ कि बाकी कुछ बचे ना बचे, ये जो दोनों चीजें यदि खत्म हो गई तो हमारा गांव खत्म हो जाएगा। उसमें एक और चीज नई निकली है जिसका फैशन है वीडीसाइड्स का। बहुत तेजी से ये राउंड अप्स यूज हो रहे हैं, जिसमें गांव की औरतों को पूरी तरह काम जा रहा है। हमारे यहाँ इतनी तेजी से अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट औरतों की कभी नहीं हुई जैसे अभी हो रही है। और दूसरा, उसके कारण उनका खाद्य जा रहा है, उनका पोषण जा रहा है, क्योंकि these are nutrients what the greens what they got from the land. तो मैं ये कह रही हूँ कि आप सब जहां जहां काम कर रहे हैं, आप जिस एंटरप्राइज पे काम कर रहे हैं जरूर करिए. हम मगन संग्रहालय समिति का काम ही ये ढूंढते रहना नए नए एंटरप्राइजेस, छोटे एंटरप्राइजेस, ये मानकर कि घास झुकती है पर टूटती नहीं है, पेड़ झुकता है तो टूट जाता है. तो हम बहुत सारी घासें उगा रहे हैं. तो आप जितने भी एंटरप्राइजेस पे बात करिए, पर कृपा करके ये देखिए कि हम ऐसी चीजें न ले जाएं जिससे गांव खत्म हो जाए. धन्यवाद.
थैंक यू विभा जी, मगर हम आपको दोबारा जरूर बुलाएंगे, क्योंकि ऐसे हो नहीं सकता कि आपकी insights और knowledge से हम ना सीखें. And I think I was a very poor translator because I got so engrossed in listening to you that I didn't do a good justice to that. But thank you. And I think one point that I take back: who defines, who certifies what's organic or what? It's nature that defines. And I think we've forgotten how to read what nature gives. In fact, we were never taught. I don't think I was ever taught in school what the trees grow around in my locality. So I don't think any one of us sitting here at least from my generation up, have learned that kind of geography. So we know sugar comes, सबसे ज़्यादा sugar कहाँ बनती है और सबसे ज़्यादा bamboo कहाँ उगता है, मगर मेरे backyard में क्या उगता है मुझे नहीं मालूम. And I think that kind of ecological knowledge we don't have in our system. But we are running short of time. We would like to keep listening to you guys, but we would also like the floor to respond, react, ask questions. 5 to 7 minutes, a few questions before I would request our panel to give their last one minute closures. But please, can I request my colleagues to take the mic? We have a hand there. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, they're getting a mic to you. Please अपना नाम भी बताइएगा.
I'm Vineet Sharma. I'm working as a consultant with the firm. My basic question regarding with the green technology. We are producing technology, but it is not green. For example, in the case of mobility and etc., even in the latest technology, AI, etc., we are seeing a lot of sensors, a lot of material, and their life cycles are quite low. Even with the data centers that are a lot more guzzling, a lot of these power and water, etc. And a lot of these technologies are highly imported and basically use materials which are not sustainable. So how do we make that thing a lot more greener, and even with the and they can be only be afforded by the large corporate firms, which are not motivated enough to go scale it up for a greener innovation. So how can we make them a lot more through investments, a lot more sustainable through ESG norms, landings which are greener in nature, and or through skills, because kids today are learning artificial intelligence, etc., but they are not able to look at the things from the holistic point of view, because even with the agriculture we are seeing stubble burning, etc. But how can we make that stubble converted into for example for productive use, so that that stubble is disposed of in a sustainable manner, or through technologies that can be even with the EVs or etc. We are seeing for example the 5G, etc. They are using a lot more technologies, sensors, etc. But they are not they are not able to connect with the ecosystem as such. Or through we can use maybe through the ESG norms, so that these large corporates are able to fund or through ratings agencies, so that they are rated betterly, so that there is an incentive for them to scale it up and for a better future. Thanks.
Anyone would like to? Please go ahead.
There's no disagreement at all with everything you said, sir. Absolutely agree with you. And that's the bad news. The good news is that I also work very closely with a few investing firms. Most corporates, and I'm using the word most with caution, have now strong internal and external impetus to look for greener solutions. As an investor, every PE, when they list out reasons, and I'm sure Dr. Khosla will know this, when they list out reasons for you to invest or not to invest in you, I have had the privilege of working in a few startups. One of the clear message coming from investing community is if you don't have a green roadmap, you're not worth investing. And the reason is very simple. I mean, as much as money is a bad word, but let's be very clear. If you don't have a green roadmap, your survival is at risk. And as an investor, why would I invest in something whose survival is at risk? So these things, I mean, thanks to discussions like this, thanks to forums like this and many such, these things are becoming mainstream. Are they mainstream today? Absolutely not. Will they be forcefully mainstreamed? Absolutely yes. And I'll just give you one example of how responsible usage of technology again can be used to drive change. So, for Anna University, and many of you would have heard of Anna University in Chennai. With Anna University, we started, and that again is embedded in the curriculum as a part of the credit, project-based learning programs. And we enrolled 54,000 students, almost 1,300 professors, mentoring 4 cohorts. All the programs that they have something or the other to do with how we can make life better for the underprivileged. And how we can make, and these are all voluntarily taken. I'm not, I can share with you the project. These are all taken by the students. It's so encouraging and so empowering to see them think like that. One example I'll give you, Chennai City. There is a group of 2 cohorts working on helping with sewage overflows in Chennai City. So they're using IoT devices in their pilot, which would very simply measure overflows at a certain point, at a certain level, send alerts to anybody and everybody in the ecosystem. So they have escalation matrices. It actually has an escalation matrix where if nobody acts on it, the chief minister gets a call. Now, these are the kind of, I call them big, hairy, audacious thought processes that are coming from the youngsters. Technology is at best an enabler. Technology is not the solution. It can enable, but the solution has to be driven with, sustainability in mind. Otherwise, trust me, you will not get money in the market because your sustainability is linked to how you invest in sustainability of the universe we are living in. And thank you, Vibhaji, for the wonderful talk. I want to take this absolutely. This is imperative. And kaise hum technology, policymakers और सबको मिलाकर और अपने गाँव को वाइब्रेंट बनाएं. मैं खुद एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट रह चुका हूँ. मैंने मतलब बड़े छोटे लेवल पे अपनी जिंदगी शुरू की थी by starting an agriculture farm, very close to my heart. This is the nub of the problem. If we can start bottom up, all of those other problems will get solved themselves. The economy and the ecosystem will force solutions.
Thanks, Navneet. Problems आए और उनको escalate करें. Maybe problems आने से पहले, कुछ साल पहले ये बता दिया जाए कि ये problem आने वाली है, क्योंकि आप इस तरीके से चल रहे हैं. I think that is what we need at this point of time. Floods आने के बाद तो बह ही जाते हैं. But Vijay, I think you had your hand up. Somebody can please get Dr. Pataki a mic. Pataki ji ke paas, please.
Thank you. Is it possible to share reflections rather than ask questions?
Anything.
I mean, they've spoken so beautifully, I don't feel like asking questions, but they have triggered thoughts.
Absolutely.
And while there are many thoughts that I'd like to share, I've been looking at my watch and I've been looking at your face, and I know I can't hold this mic too long. I'm just going to share one important reflection. triggered mainly by Dr. Suman Sahai's comment about ownership of technology. I think it's a frightfully important point that she made. It might just be an enabler, but it's still a question of ownership. I think if you dive deeply into the idea, it's profound. Now, in a lot of our work, we are, without saying it in so many words, we are actually grappling with the question of change, attitude change, behavior change. We're looking at ways for the human species to change. Now, I've been in the change profession all my life with my professional background. And I know that even bringing about change has a technology. There's a technology for behavior change. And this has always been at the back of my mind. Who controls this technology for change? If I'm appointed to bring about social change, behavior change, I control that technology. How do I make sure that this technology is handed over to the people to change themselves? I could speak on this for 2 hours, all right? Because I've tried to practice it in my profession all these years. But I think it's enough if I just make this point that our central task is behavior change, and even that has a technology. And it's worth thinking about it. Thanks very much. I'd be happy to continue this discussion with some of you over lunch.
That would be great. And if there are no other sort of burning points and burning questions, we could break for lunch now. But before we break for lunch, last 30-second, not more than 1 minute reaction. I know it's very difficult. It's the wrong thing to do. I've suffered.
Sounds
But
like a TV debate.
I know, but so that we can, sort of close. Last thoughts that were coming to your mind as you.
Just one point from me. Nature always exists in dynamic equilibrium. And whenever we introduce any technology, green or non-green or whatever, it disturbs that equilibrium. We have to see that how much disturbance nature can sustain. And accordingly, we can introduce new technologies. Right now, we are blindly following new technologies without considering long-term repercussions. So this is the right time because Earth's carrying capacity is, stressed fully. And if we don't do that calculation before introducing any new technology, we are going to for a big problem. So that is my suggestion. And for entrepreneurs, my suggestion is there two things. Try to connect with the market and do good packaging. That is also required beside the good product. Thank you.
Thank you.
So staying on the subject of indigenous technology or indigenous knowledge, one big lacuna in the policy space that we identify and that I can see is the fact that we don't project indigenous knowledge, although we are the owners of that technology. In the policy space, we need to develop legislation which establishes ownership over indigenous knowledge. And the reason for that is very practical. When you have violation of a patent, it is punishable in law. So unless you have a law under which you can be punished, and I don't want to emphasize the word punish, but where corrections can be made, you need to legislate. And a law on indigenous knowledge has been a long time coming. It hasn't come yet.
Thank you.
Just a few comments on policy. I think I would like the findings of this discussions would be that we need to enable participation as a policy objective. And that enablement of participation, I would call a social contract. And I think we need, as citizens within our own countries, to start figuring out, what does a social contract look like? I think we need to define Green Deal policies that are shared by many. And if you want a quick win, you know, the discussion on batteries and stuff, how about the very simple idea, tax the hell out of everything that you don't want and incentivize and subsidize what you do?
Nothing much. I think, you know, I'm going to shamelessly steal the blue flower example, Dr. Sahai. This is to be the real bit. You know, we live in knowledge silos, and you know, there are these indigenous technologies that are sitting at different places. There's this knowledge sitting in the villages. There's this knowledge sitting in those concrete towers in Noida and Gurgaon. All of that needs to meet in order for us to eventually create an equitable and sustainable, you know, ecosystem. So to me, that's really where the crux of the matter lies.
The last thing I would like to say, that the degree of dependence equals the degree of exploitation. So let's reduce this dependence and let's be independent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very clear that the more we have platforms for engagement, bringing everyone on board, and the more we share our knowledge, the more we'll be able to have the blue flowers meet. And with those diverse viewpoints coming together, we'd probably be able to understand where the repercussions may be that we are missing out on. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been wonderful listening to you, and thank you to all the participants. I think we are now at the end.
Zenith, I'll steal the last 5 to 10 minutes in case that's fine with you.
You would like to ask a question?
Not really. I would want to conclude the event. Yes. I'm going to stand here so that I don't crowd the stage. We don't want to send any of our panelists back without expressing how thankful we are that you have been able to, you know, fit Saar Sangam into your schedule, and that too at such a short notice. May I request Dr. Khosla to please join Zenith in extending a token of regards for the panelists.
Sorry, I forgot that there are plants. Dr. Khosla.
Can we have a round of applause, please?
And I keep handing it
both
over.
of these.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
वैसे ये money plant है. Money plant है. If it was a,
Can we have the
there's
next
both
plant,
money
please?
and plant.
A combination of blue and yellow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope we could listen to you for longer, just that we're trying to ensure that everybody gets food on time.
There's one thela missing.
Can we stay back for a minute on stage for a group photograph, please?
Where's the plant?
That will be better. That'll be nice.
Green for green economies, ma'am. Okay, with this, we have come to the end of the event. Thanks once again to all of the panelists. Thanks to Dr. Khosla, to Zenith, Pat, and everybody else for joining us here. Special thanks to Yatris who have been able to join us for 3 days, 2 on the field and 1 here in Saar Sangam. We hope to continue the engagement with all of you. Please do join us for lunch.
Do we have Sheila for a vote of thanks? Then I would like to say, give one thanks which you've forgotten, is to the back-end team of the organization that was working very hard to this thing. And thank you very much for enabling us on this yatra. It was, I mean, if it was hectic for us, it must have been crazy for you guys. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bad trade rise ratio. I said bad trade.
Bad trade rise ratio, 6 inches is the maximum legally allowed. So I'm still.